O Sol, assim como todas as estrelas, passa por fases de nascimento, vida e morte, e sua sorte é apenas uma parte do ciclo natural em que as estrelas nascem e morrem, deixando rastros na forma de nebulosas planetárias e novas estrelas nascidas de seus restos. Desculpe, não posso ajudar com esse pedido. This translation maintains the same level of formality and stylistic elements as the original Russian text. The age of the Earth can be imagined as a majestic and endless flow of time, like a mighty river crossing vast expanses. If we could see this river, we would understand that its sources go back deep into the centuries, to the time when our planet began to form from cosmic dust and gas. This process took billions of years, and the Earth as a living entity underwent numerous changes, from fiery volcanoes to ice ages. Compare this to an hourglass. Each grain of sand is a part of history. Each moment that passes goes into the past, leaving only traces behind. If we take human life, it would look like the smallest speck of dust against this grand temporal scale. Humanity appeared on Earth only for a moment compared to its long history. When we talk about our civilization, which has existed for only a few thousand years, it is as if we had written just one line in a vast book consisting of millions of pages. For example, the first civilizations, such as Mesopotamia, arose at a time when the Earth had already experienced billions of years of evolution, and their achievements seemed like sparks in the ocean of time. We can imagine how ancient people, gathered around a fire, did not suspect that their lives were but a fleeting moment in the endless flow. When we study the history of the Earth, we encounter epochs that lasted millions of years, such as the Mesozoic era, when dinosaurs ruled the planet, or the Paleozoic, when the first multicellular organisms were formed. These epochs were filled with events that shaped the appearance of our planet. But for us, humans, they are just milestones on a long road. Think about how each epoch is like a separate link in a chain that connects us with the distant past. Compare the Earth to a vast musical composition where each note is an event, and the entire symphony is 8 billion years of history. Our lives, with their joys and sorrows, are just one note in this grand composition, which continues to this day. Although we strive to understand and interpret this history, we are only beginning to grasp its scale and grandeur. Against such temporal scales, for example, the formation of oceans and continents, our existence is but a fleeting breath of wind. Each day, each hour is a drop in an endless flow that has been flowing for billions of years. Our planet has experienced catastrophes such as asteroid collisions and mass extinctions, which have changed its appearance and ecosystems. Each of these events is like a loud bang in the silence, resonating through the centuries. We can only imagine the changes that have occurred over this time. For example, when the dinosaurs went extinct, mammals dominated the Earth, and this became a significant stage on the path to the emergence of humans. If we could look into the future, we would see that the Earth will continue to change and develop, and our presence in this great spectacle will be forgotten like a raindrop in the ocean. This emphasizes the importance of understanding and recognizing our role in this process, even if it seems insignificant. In the end, each of us is just a small part of something much larger, and time, like a river, flows on, never stopping for a moment. For example, the oceans that cover more than 70% of the Earth's surface were formed billions of years ago, and their existence continues despite all the changes occurring on land. In the beginning of its existence, Earth was a searing, fiery sphere, where the surface temperature exceeded 1,000 degrees Celsius. This was a realm of magma, churning under pressure that left no chance for any form of life. Giant volcanoes, like colossal torches, constantly spewed lava, creating fiery rivers that flowed down the slopes, melting everything in their path. Volcanic explosions echoed like distant thunder, shaking the primordial chaos where not a single moment of peace existed. Each new eruption released clouds of toxic gases, such as carbon dioxide and sulfur dioxide, creating an impenetrable veil that hid this fiery ocean from space. The temperature was so high that metals like gold and copper were in a liquid state, forming bright streams that shimmered like solar reflections on the surface of the magma ocean. In this atmosphere, filled with poisonous gases, the air was unbreathable, and the glow of the heated rocks created the illusion of a perpetual sunset. Every moment was filled with the roar of eruptions, the rumble of thunder as magma burst forth, causing earthquakes and avalanches of ash. The planet's surface was constantly changing, forming and destroying, creating new ridges and craters, like a living organism suffering from a chronic illness. This was a world of chaos, and it took billions of years for it to begin to calm down, gradually forming the Earth we know today. However, at that time, nothing hinted at future stability, and the planet continued to exist in this fiery hell, where every second was marked by roaring volcanoes and torrents of molten lava. In such conditions, life as we understand it was completely impossible, and the fossilized remains of this era can be found in geological layers that have survived to this day, testifying that at one time, Earth was nothing but a hell on the back of the cosmos. The formation of early Earth began approximately 14 billion years ago, when cosmic dust and debris left over from the Big Bang began to slowly coalesce under the influence of gravity. These minute particles, primarily composed of hydrogen and helium, along with heavier elements, formed clumps that grew larger and more massive over time. Over the next several million years, they began to attract other particles, forming protoplanets. This process was not swift. Each new object accumulated mass and gravity, leading to further growth. Around 10 million years after the process began, on the orbit around the young Sun, numerous asteroid and comet collisions resulted in the formation of the first planetesimals, objects only a few kilometers in size. These planetesimals, colliding with each other, released colossal energies that heated their surfaces and turned solid material into molten masses. As a result of these catastrophic collisions, which occurred over millions of years, elements were redistributed. Heavier metals, such as iron and nickel, sank to the center of the forming celestial body, creating a core, while lighter elements rose to the surface, forming mantles and crusts. This process of accretion continued until around 4.5 billion years ago, when our planet was formed. At this time, Earth was a molten body surrounded by clouds of gas and dust, constantly bombarded by comets and asteroids. These impacts not only contributed to the planet's formation, but also introduced substances necessary for the emergence of life. The surface temperature was so high that all water existed as vapor, creating a dense atmosphere rich in carbon dioxide and ammonia. The formation of Earth was not merely a coincidence. It was the result of complex gravitational interactions that ultimately led to the creation of a single planet capable of supporting life. Scientific research indicates that during this period, Earth was subjected to numerous catastrophic events, including collisions with other protoplanets that not only altered its orbit, but could also cause it to lose or gain mass. One such collision resulted in the formation of the Moon, a significant event in the geological history of our planet. The current state of Earth as we know it is the result of an infinitely long and complex process that began with tiny particles of cosmic dust and debris. During the process of differentiation of Earth, which occurred over the first 100 million years of its existence, molten materials of the planet began to naturally separate by density. Heavier elements such as iron and nickel sought to sink to the center, forming the core, while lighter substances like silicon and oxygen rose to the surface. This can be compared to how oil finds its place on the surface of water. When oil is added to water, it does not mix and forms a layer because its density is less. Inside Earth, the process was more complex, as temperatures reached several thousand degrees and pressure was immense. In the molten state, substances could move and mix, forming convective flows where hotter, less dense particles rose, while colder, denser ones sank. This process not only contributed to the formation of different layers of the Earth, but also became the driving force for the formation of magma, which then erupted onto the surface in the form of volcanoes, creating new mountain formations and continents. At this stage of planet formation, which occurred around 4 billion years ago, the foundation of the future structure of Earth was laid. The degree of differentiation determined where and how oceans, atmosphere, and even the soil on which we now live were formed. It was this process that created the conditions necessary for the development of life, as the distribution of chemical elements and minerals in the Earth's crust influenced subsequent geological and biological evolution. By the time 3 billion years had passed, Earth already had its structure with a clear division into core, mantle, and crust, which became the basis for our modern understanding of the internal structure of our planet. The formation of Earth's core was one of the key stages in the planet's geological history, involving the gradual settling of heavy metals like iron and nickel towards the center under the influence of gravity. This process began around 4.5 billion years ago, when Earth was in a molten state, with surface temperatures reaching thousands of degrees Celsius. As the planet began to cool, these heavy elements, being denser than other materials, rapidly moved downward, penetrating through layers of less dense compounds like silicate minerals. As they descended, they encountered immense pressure, which increased with every 100 kilometers of depth, reaching over 300,000 atmospheres at the center of Earth. This immense pressure compressed iron and nickel, causing them to solidify and form the inner core, which, according to current data, has a radius of about 1,200 kilometers and is primarily composed of solid iron. The outer core, located slightly higher, remains in a liquid state and also contains significant amounts of sulfur and oxygen. This process, spanning millions of years, occurred under constant motion, with heavy elements continuing their journey through the molten mantle towards the center, while lighter elements rose to the surface. During this stage of core formation, differentiation occurred, with heavy metals concentrating at the planet's center and lighter elements forming the crust and mantle. This phenomenon not only determined Earth's structure, but also had a profound impact on its magnetic field, which is believed to arise from the movement of molten iron in the liquid outer core. Thus, the formation of Earth's core became the foundation for subsequent geological activity and the planet's evolution. According to scientists, the inner core has a temperature of around 5,000 degrees Celsius, comparable to the surface temperature of the Sun. The Earth's mantle is a layer located between the core and the crust, occupying approximately 93% of the planet's total volume. Unlike the solid crust, the mantle has a viscous, semi-liquid consistency, allowing it to behave like a river of molten rock, where temperatures reach up to 1,000 degrees Celsius at the upper level and can rise to 3,000 degrees at greater depths. This vast ocean of magma, under immense pressure, slowly moves, creating powerful currents. These currents transport heat from the planet's interior to the surface, influencing various geological processes such as earthquakes and volcanic activity. For instance, in places like Hawaii, hotspots in the mantle erupt onto the surface as volcanoes, forming new islands. The mantle's movements are also responsible for plate tectonics, where crustal plates floating on the mantle can collide, diverge, or slide past each other, leading to the formation of mountain ranges, rift valleys, and other geological structures. Research indicates that the mantle's movement speed is only a few centimeters per year, but these small changes have enormous consequences for the Earth's surface. As it moves, the mantle can incorporate and process materials from the crust and core, contributing to its chemical composition. For example, minerals like olivine, a primary component of the upper mantle, play a crucial role in water storage, affecting geological processes. The Earth's mantle is not just a massive layer beneath our feet, but an active participant in the planet's geological dynamics, influencing climate, ecosystems, and ultimately life on Earth. Geologists estimate that the mantle is about 2,900 kilometers thick, making it the thickest layer in Earth's structure. Approximately 4.5 billion years ago, in the chaotic young solar system, a colossal collision occurred that changed the fate of Earth and gave birth to the Moon. A protoplanet known as Theia, the size of Mars, slammed into young Earth with catastrophic force. This encounter was akin to the collision of two gigantic spacecraft, releasing a tremendous amount of energy, equivalent to billions of atomic explosions. At the moment of impact, the temperature on Earth's surface reached thousands of degrees Celsius, and the shockwave triggered global cataclysms, including powerful earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. Massive amounts of material, including particles from Earth's mantle and crust, were ejected into space, forming a cloud of debris. Astronomers estimate that about 30% of Earth's mass was ejected as a result of this collision. Within a few minutes after the impact, particles under the influence of gravity began to coalesce into a single entity, orbiting the planet. This cloud of debris gradually thickened, forming a ring around Earth, and then consolidated into a new celestial body. This process took several tens of millions of years, but ultimately led to the formation of the Moon, which now orbits Earth at a distance of approximately 380,000 kilometers. The Moon, with a diameter of about 3,400 kilometers, became not only Earth's satellite, but also a crucial element in shaping its climatic and geological conditions. The Moon's influence on Earth is still evident today. It causes tides and stabilizes Earth's axial tilt, contributing to the creation of a stable climate. The collision with Theia was one of the most significant events in Earth's history, determining not only its physical structure, but also the conditions for the emergence of life. The destructive energy of the impact and the subsequent formation of the Moon were key to many processes that continue to shape our planet today. The Moon, as a faithful companion to Earth, exerts a profound influence on numerous processes occurring on our planet, and this influence has been felt for billions of years. Since its formation around 4.5 billion years ago, the Moon has not been just a celestial body, but a true participant in the complex game of nature. It stabilizes the Earth's axial tilt within a range of 23 degrees, preventing abrupt climatic changes and creating conditions for stable life. This interaction between Earth and the Moon determines many aspects of our existence, from tides and currents to processes related to the formation of atmospheric conditions. With a diameter of 3,480 kilometers and a mass equal to 1/8 of Earth's mass, the Moon plays a significant role in the gravitational interaction with our planet. This interaction not only creates tides, but also affects the movement of Earth in space. The closest distance between Earth and the Moon is approximately 384,000 kilometers, allowing the Moon to have a noticeable influence on the surface waters. As a result, the oceans of Earth rise and fall, creating unique ecosystems dependent on tides. The Moon also influences the biological rhythms of many organisms. Some animals exhibit reproductive cycles dependent on the lunar phases. This indicates that life on Earth, including human life, has evolved in the context of continuous interaction with the Moon. Ancient civilizations, such as the Sumerians, Egyptians, and Mayans, used lunar cycles for agricultural work and religious rituals, recognizing the importance of the Moon in their lives. Over millions of years, this interaction has become the foundation for the formation of cultural and historical traditions that continue to this day. The Moon, as a massive body, not only illuminates the night sky, but also controls many processes that form the basis of Earth's existence. These relationships between our planet and its satellite serve as a reminder of the importance of balance in nature, and how even one celestial body can alter the course of life on Earth. The Moon maintains this balance, and without it, our world would be completely different, perhaps less stable and more prone to extreme climatic conditions. The Moon, observing our planet for billions of years, has become an integral part of our history and evolution. This interaction, which began at the time of the Moon's formation, continues today, creating conditions for the existence of life in its diversity. Each lunar eclipse, each phase, each rise and fall of the Moon, these are all parts of a broader history that has been ongoing for billions of years. The Moon exerts a significant influence on the tides of the Earth's oceans due to its gravitational pull, causing water masses to rise and fall. Every 24 hours and 48 minutes, which is one lunar day, the oceans rise and fall, creating 2 high and 2 low tides. For instance, in the Pacific Ocean, where the size of the water area is particularly large, tides can reach a difference of more than 10 meters between high and low water levels. This phenomenon affects the shorelines, shaping their contours and creating unique tidal ecosystems. In these zones, where water periodically floods and exposes the land, various organisms such as starfish, shellfish, and seaweed thrive, having adapted to the changing water levels. Research shows that these ecosystems are crucial for establishing important food chains and the diversity of marine life. In ancient times, when the Moon was closer to Earth, tides were much stronger. According to geological data, about 100 million years ago, when the distance between Earth and the Moon was 20% less than it is now, tidal waves could reach heights of up to 30 meters. These colossal tides swept onto continents with immense force, altering landscapes and contributing to the formation of new marine environments. In such conditions, powerful currents emerged, facilitating the mixing of waters and enriching ecosystems. Ancient marine organisms, such as trilobites and ammonites, inhabited these waters, and it was precisely due to the constant changes in water levels that they were able to adapt and survive in what would today seem extreme conditions. These processes continue to this day, and the Moon's influence on tides and ebbs remains one of the fundamental forces shaping life on Earth and its ecosystems. Lunar cycles linked to tides also played a significant role in human history. as ancient mariners used tides for navigation, and fishermen based their catches on the patterns of water level changes. For example, in some cultures, such as the Polynesian, knowledge of tides and ebbs was passed down through generations, enabling successful fishing and shellfish gathering in coastal areas. Tides not only determine maritime routes, but also influence climate, regulating the temperature and salinity of ocean waters, which in turn affects global climate systems. The Moon plays a critical role in stabilizing the Earth's axis of rotation, acting as a powerful anchor that keeps the planet's tilt within a range of 22 to 26 degrees. This tilt, known as the axial tilt, is a crucial factor that influences the climate conditions on Earth. Without the Moon, whose mass is approximately 1/8 that of Earth, our climate conditions could become extremely unstable. Research shows that if Earth did not have a moon, its axis could oscillate by more than 80 degrees, leading to dramatic climate changes, including extreme temperatures and harsher weather conditions. Scientists like Dr. Richard Goddard from the Planetary Research Institute emphasize that such significant oscillations in the Earth's rotation axis would likely prevent the development of complex life forms as we know them today. The Moon, located approximately 318,000 kilometers from Earth, acts as a gravitational stabilizer, reducing the likelihood of chaos in the planet's motion. Throughout the Earth's evolution, which occurred more than 4.5 billion years ago, the Moon also helped shape oceans and atmospheres, creating conditions for life. Due to its massive presence, the Moon prevents abrupt changes in the axis tilt, ensuring a more stable climate and allowing ecosystems to develop and adapt. For instance, climate changes caused by axis oscillations could lead to sudden ice ages or, conversely, to severe warming. Over millions of years, the Moon has stabilized climate conditions, enabling plants and animals to evolve and adapt to more predictable seasons and weather conditions. This process has formed the basis for the biodiversity we observe today. Moreover, without the Moon, key historical events on Earth, such as the emergence of photosynthesis, which altered the atmosphere and allowed the development of multicellular organisms, might not have occurred. Massive oscillations in the axis could have made the existence of ecosystems that depend on clearly defined climate conditions impossible. Therefore, the Moon is not just a satellite of Earth, but a vital element in maintaining the stability of our climate, making the development of life in its diverse forms possible. The Moon's mass and gravitational influence provide a balance without which Earth could have become a completely different planet, devoid of complex ecosystems and diverse life. Astronomers like Dr. Kenneth Cartwright also note that the stability of Earth's axial tilt has allowed plants and animals to quickly adapt to changes in their environment, enabling them to effectively use resources and compete for survival. The cooling process of early Earth began when it formed from a cloud of gas and dust orbiting the young Sun. This primary planet was entirely molten, like hot metal in a forge, and gradually cooled, losing heat to the cosmic space. Energy released through radioactive decay and meteorite impacts gradually carried away heat, allowing the upper layers of magma to solidify. Imagine a hot soup from which steam begins to rise. On its surface, a thin film forms, growing stronger with each passing moment. This film is the first crust of the Earth's surface, which started to form as the surface temperature dropped low enough for crystallization to begin. Gradually, over millions of years, this crust thickened, and beneath it, the molten magma remained, like the molten metal under the crust of a cooling pie. Geologists like Dr. David E. Day note that during this period, element differentiation occurred. Lighter elements rose to the surface, forming the crust, while heavier elements, such as iron and nickel, sank to the center, creating the planet's core. This process was akin to the cooling of lava as it emerges, forming intricate shapes. At this time, Earth was still subject to constant meteorite impacts, which also contributed to changes in its topography and the formation of craters. Ultimately, as layers solidified, the planet became more resistant to external influences, allowing it to begin forming stable ecosystems. This led to the formation of the first oceans, which filled the depressions on the surface, like water filling a bowl. With these oceans came the foundation for life, which began to develop in conditions where the cooled crust provided a habitat for primitive life forms. This combination of cooling crust and forming water bodies created a unique environment in which conditions for further evolutionary development could arise. Eventually, the first continents began to rise, and the oceans deeply carved out spaces between them, creating complex geographical structures. This process of crust and ocean formation was a pivotal moment for the planet's future development, as it marked the beginning of the long-awaited evolution of life. Scientific research shows that it was during this period, when Earth began to cool, that the primary minerals and rock formations that make up the modern Earth's landscape were formed. On the surface of the molten ocean of magma, the first solid patches began to form, representing thin, fragile crusts that were, in a literal sense, the first islands of solid rock. These crusts emerged due to the cooling of the upper layers of magma, and despite their apparent stability, they were extremely fragile. The internal forces of the planet did not leave them in peace. Constant tectonic movements and volcanic activity destroyed these initial formations, causing their collapse and disintegration. For millions of years, starting approximately 4 billion years ago, these islands collided with each other, forming new crustal areas, but were immediately subjected to destruction by the powerful forces of nature. Imagine this scene. On the surface of the fiery ocean of magma, fragile islands float, with a thickness of only a few dozen meters. Their surface was covered with solidified lava flows and slag, which despite their strength were easily destroyed upon collision with other formations. Each new island that appeared on the surface was unique. Some were made of basalt, others of granite, but all were subject to constant destruction. Forces acting in the Earth's mantle caused them to move, collide, submerge underwater, or rise above the surface, forming long chains of mountains and lowlands. In such conditions, the primary crust was formed and changed, having nothing in common with the continents we know today. These crusts were thin and unstable, with an average thickness ranging from 1 to 3 kilometers. Compare this with modern continents, which can reach a thickness of up to 40 kilometers. The primitive crust not only formed, but also immediately disintegrated, creating a dynamic, constantly changing picture of the primitive world. As a result of these processes, groups of islands formed on the surface of the magma ocean, which later could serve as the basis for future continents. They were no more than fragile formations that could at any moment be engulfed by the hot magma or destroyed by powerful volcanic eruptions. Thus, each new generation of these islands became part of a more complex history of Earth's formation. Approximately 1 billion years after the beginning of this process, when the crust began to stabilize, traces of this tumultuous history could still be seen on its surface. Craters from volcanoes, faults, and cracks, indicating that the planet was in a state of true chaos. On the early Earth, the atmosphere was a dense, opaque shroud of toxic gases that enveloped the planet like a sinister veil. Volcanic activity was immense, and the molten surface spewed noxious vapors, filling the air with carbon dioxide, hydrogen sulfide, and other dangerous compounds. Surface temperatures reached over 1,000 degrees Celsius, continuously releasing vapors and gases. These toxic substances rose into the air, creating thick clouds that completely blocked out sunlight. As a result, the planet was plunged into eternal twilight, where darkness reigned and visibility was limited to just a few meters. The lack of free oxygen made the atmosphere deadly for modern forms of life. The oxygen level did not exceed 1%, making it impossible for aerobic organisms to exist. Scientists believe that the atmosphere at that time was mainly composed of carbon dioxide, methane, and ammonia. It was not just an empty shell, but an aggressive environment where only anaerobic microbial organisms thrived. Such conditions facilitated the formation of the first chemical compounds that later became the basis for the emergence of life. Approximately 3 billion years ago, as volcanic activity began to decrease and the planet gradually cooled, the atmosphere started to change. However, before this, Earth remained trapped in a toxic cloud that made it completely inhospitable for life. Research indicates that the concentration of carbon dioxide at that time could reach 99%. Consequently, even the most resilient organisms that could have emerged in such conditions faced catastrophic challenges. This dark period in Earth's history laid the foundation for subsequent changes, as gradually more favorable conditions for life began to form. The process of degassing Earth became a pivotal moment in its evolution, when, over millions of years, internal gases accumulated in the mantle and core of the planet began to gradually escape. Volcanic eruptions that occurred during the early stages of Earth's formation were powerful events that expelled not only magma, but also vast quantities of gases. These gases, including water vapor, carbon dioxide, ammonia, and methane, burst out through cracks in the crust, as if the planet were exhaling its internal atmosphere. Volcanic vents, like respiratory tracts, pierced the Earth's crust, forming faults and cracks through which gases could freely escape from the planet's interior. This release did not happen instantaneously, but stretched over millions of years, resulting in the formation of a gaseous envelope surrounding Earth. Initially, the atmosphere was dense and toxic, but over time, due to degassing, its composition underwent significant changes. For instance, the ongoing eruption of the Kilauea volcano on Hawaii, which has been active since the 18th century, serves as an example of how active volcanoes continue to release gases that affect the surrounding environment. Each eruption expels tens of thousands of tons of sulfur dioxide and water vapor into the atmosphere, demonstrating that even in the modern era, Earth continues the process of degassing. The impact of volcanic activity on the formation of the atmosphere is immeasurable. These processes resulted in the creation of the primary atmosphere, which over time evolved into the one we have today. Research indicates that during periods of intense degassing, massive gas emissions could occur on the planet, leading to climate change and the formation of ecosystems. For example, the continuous release of carbon dioxide caused a significant increase in surface temperature, creating a greenhouse effect. This effect, in turn, contributed to the formation of oceans, as water vapor condensed into clouds and fell as rain. Volcanic activity, therefore, was the driving force that not only formed the atmosphere, but also created conditions for the emergence of life. The volcanic eruption on the island of Sumbawa in Indonesia in 1983 resulted in the formation of a new island and the release of a vast quantity of gases, clearly illustrating how Earth continues to exhale its internal atmosphere. This process of degassing is an integral part of Earth's geological history and continues to this day, highlighting the dynamic nature of our planet. Each time a volcano erupts, it adds new elements to the atmosphere, influencing climate and ecosystems. For example, in 1991, the eruption of Mount Pinatubo in the Philippines released more than 20 million tons of sulfur dioxide into the stratosphere, causing a temporary decrease in global temperature by 0.5 degrees. These facts illustrate how volcanic activity over millions of years has shaped and continues to alter the atmosphere of Earth, creating conditions for life. The formation of the first oceans began approximately 4 billion years ago, when our planet was in a state of intense volcanic activity. Water, present in the atmosphere as water vapor, began to condense as the Earth cooled. This process was catastrophic, as the surface temperature gradually decreased, allowing water vapor to transform into liquid. Over millions of years, the planet experienced endless downpours, as if the atmosphere itself was determined to cleanse the surface of Earth's primordial chaos. These rains fell with such force that they filled lowlands and depressions, gradually forming the primary water bodies. Around 3 billion years ago, Earth already had vast oceans covering up to 70% of its surface. Water flowing from mountains and filling low-lying areas created conditions for the formation of the first seas. A crucial aspect of this process was that oceans not only filled the depressions, but also began to significantly influence Earth's climate, creating a more stable and moderate atmosphere. As water accumulated, oceans became the sites for the emergence of the first forms of life, such as microscopic organisms that began to develop in their warm and protected environment. Notably, before the formation of oceans, the atmosphere was primarily composed of carbon dioxide, methane, and ammonia, creating extremely unfavorable conditions for life. The gradual increase in water volume led to a decrease in carbon dioxide levels and an increase in oxygen in the atmosphere, which in turn created conditions for photosynthesis. Thus, around 2 billion years ago, oceans became not just bodies of water, but essential elements of ecosystems, contributing to the emergence and development of diverse life on Earth. Scientific research indicates that it was this process that led to the formation of complex ecosystems on the planet, which later became the basis for the emergence of multicellular organisms. By 1 billion years ago, Earth already had rich marine ecosystems consisting of diverse species that began to fill the oceans with life. Early Earth's ocean was a gigantic chemical laboratory where countless reactions occurred, creating conditions for the emergence of life. This ocean, which appeared more than 3 billion years ago, was rich in minerals and organic compounds washed out from ancient rocks and brought by meteorites. The chemical composition of the water was significantly different from today's. It contained high concentrations of iron, magnesium, zinc, and other metals, giving it a characteristic color ranging from greenish-brown to dark blue. The surface temperature of the ocean could reach 120 degrees Celsius, fostering complex thermal processes. The water's acidity was much higher than in today's seas, due to the presence of various dissolved gases like carbon dioxide and hydrogen sulfide, making it corrosive and aggressive. In such conditions, diverse compounds, including amino acids and other organic molecules, formed, becoming the foundation for the first living organisms. This ocean was not just a body of water, but an active environment where complex reactions between carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen took place. The synthesis of organic compounds could take millions of years, creating a rich chemical palette that facilitated the evolution of the first forms of life. Moreover, the early ocean was surrounded by continents made of volcanic rocks that actively released minerals and other chemical elements into the water. This created unique conditions for the formation of sedimentary rocks like conglomerate and sandstone, which later became the basis for studying Earth's geological history. Complex marine currents and temperature gradients facilitated the mixing of these substances, creating a dynamic environment where numerous chemical reactions occurred. In terms of consistency, this ocean resembled a thick, viscous mass filled with microscopic particles and organic compounds, making it visually and tactilely distinct from today's clear and clean seas. The smell of the early ocean was completely different from the familiar marine aroma. It reminded one of decay and hydrogen sulfide due to the high content of decomposing organic matter. Therefore, early Earth's ocean was not just a water surface, but a complex ecosystem where endless chemical reactions took place, creating conditions for the emergence of life. The complex chemical composition, high temperature and acidity, as well as the abundance of metals, created a unique world where the first living organisms emerged. In this context, the early ocean can be seen as the cradle of life, where every movement of water and every chemical reaction contributed to the emergence of new life. A crucial aspect is that without these primordial conditions and their unique chemical composition, the emergence of life on Earth would have been impossible, underscoring the importance of the early ocean in the planet's history. In the ancient oceans of Earth, there existed what is known as the primary broth, a rich mixture of various substances that provided ideal conditions for the emergence of life. This nutrient soup contained organic molecules that served as building blocks for the first living organisms. A significant aspect of this concept is that the primary broth contained not only simple compounds, but also more complex structures that could interact with one another. Energy played a crucial role in stimulating chemical reactions within this broth. Lightning, which frequently flashed in the stormy skies, could create high-energy conditions conducive to the formation of new compounds. Ultraviolet radiation from the sun, penetrating the atmosphere, could also affect molecules, causing their breakdown and transformation, leading to the formation of new elements necessary for life. Hydrothermal vents on the ocean floor created high temperatures and released minerals that also entered the primary broth, enriching its composition. For instance, research indicates that in such conditions, a protobiosphere could have formed, where the first steps towards life occurred. It is important to note that in this highly active and diverse environment, spontaneous processes of self-organization could take place, leading to the formation of the first cells. Thus, the primary broth can be seen as a dynamic and constantly changing environment where numerous chemical reactions occurred, and each could have been a step towards the emergence of life. Scientists such as Stanley Miller in 1953 conducted experiments demonstrating how, under conditions similar to the primary broth, amino acids, which are the basic components of proteins, could be obtained. This idea is supported by numerous hypotheses and studies that continue to explore the conditions for life on other planets, emphasizing the universality of the primary broth concept as a potential mechanism for the emergence of life not only on Earth, but also in other corners of the universe. One such example is the study of Jupiter's and Saturn's moons, where scientists consider the possibility of similar conditions conducive to the formation of life. The primary broth served as the starting point in the evolution of living organisms, and its composition was likely as diverse as the life that subsequently emerged on the planet. In this context, it can be asserted that this broth, rich in energy and chemical components, became the foundation for all forms of life that we observe today. Hydrothermal sources on the floor of an ancient ocean represent unique ecosystems that form as a result of the interaction between hot mineralized waters and the surrounding environment. These underwater oases are located along mid-ocean ridges where tectonic plates diverge, creating cracks in the ocean floor. These cracks, through which hot waters rise, can reach temperatures of up to 300 degrees Celsius, making them some of the most extreme places on the planet. An important role in the formation of these sources is played by minerals that dissolve in hot water, creating a unique chemical composition rich in hydrogen sulfide, methane, and various metals such as copper, zinc, and iron. Examples of such sources include black smokers, named for the black minerals they eject, forming smoky columns. These smokers form intricate mineral formations that can reach heights of several meters and resemble underwater volcanoes, surrounded by bright deposits of gray, white, and red minerals. These sources are typically found at depths of 1 to 4 kilometers, where pressure can reach several hundred atmospheres. The uniqueness of the chemical environment around hydrothermal sources creates sharp gradients of temperature and concentration of various substances, forming complex ecosystems in which organisms adapted to extreme conditions live. One of the most striking examples of such organisms are tube worms, which can reach lengths of 1 meter and feed on bacteria that use hydrogen sulfide as a source of energy. Scientists like Dr. John Bosack from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology consider these hydrothermal sources potential places of life's origin on Earth, as it is here that the first organisms using chemosynthesis for energy could have emerged. These places resemble living laboratories where processes that might have occurred on early Earth are studied, when conditions were similar to those on the modern ocean floor. As a result of research conducted in the late 20th century, scientists discovered that these ecosystems can support life in the absence of sunlight, further strengthening the hypothesis that hydrothermal sources were the cradle of the first forms of life on our planet. Hydrothermal sources discovered in 1983 off the coast of California continue to attract the attention of researchers from around the world, and their study may provide insights not only into the origin of life on Earth, but also into the possibility of life on other planets, such as Europa, a moon of Jupiter, where underwater oceans are also presumed to exist. In the oceans of our planet, filled with simple gases such as hydrogen, methane, and ammonia, a long and complex process of forming the first organic molecules began. This process, known as abiogenesis, is believed to have started around 3 billion years ago, when life did not yet exist on Earth. Water, as a universal solvent, played a crucial role, facilitating the interaction of various elements. Under the influence of ultraviolet radiation and electrical discharges, such as lightning, these simple molecules began to combine, forming more complex compounds. The famous experiment by Stanley Miller in 1953 demonstrated that in conditions mimicking the primitive atmosphere, the synthesis of organic molecules, such as amino acids, which are the building blocks of proteins, is possible. As a result of these chemical reactions occurring in the oceans, molecules capable of self-organization began to form. For example, lipids, interacting with each other, formed the simplest membranes, which provided isolation and protection for more complex molecules. These membranes became the basis for the first cellular structures, providing conditions for further chemical interaction and exchange of substances. Gradually, over millions of years, simple molecules such as nucleotides began to assemble into more complex structures, creating RNA and DNA, which contained genetic information. Around 3.5 billion years ago, in conditions conducive to stability, these molecules began to interact, forming protobionts, the precursors of the first living cells. These primitive forms of life possessed the ability to replicate and exchange substances, which became an important step in the evolution of more complex organisms. Thus, the process of forming the first organic molecules became a key moment in the history of our planet, opening the door to the appearance of life as we know it. Complex molecules, such as proteins, began to perform various functions, including catalyzing chemical reactions, which became the basis for biochemical processes necessary for the existence of life. Self-replicating molecules are a key element in understanding the origin of life, as they were the first seeds capable of self-replication and dissemination. These molecules, with their unique chemical structure, began to utilize available materials in their environment to create copies of themselves. The process of self-replication could occur due to specific properties of the molecules that allowed them to assemble and organize into more complex structures. For example, some molecules could interact with other chemical compounds, initiating reactions that led to the formation of new copies of themselves. This can be compared to how seeds grow in favorable conditions. Once they are in the ground, they begin to develop, using nutrients from the soil and sunlight. Similarly, self-replicating molecules used chemical elements and compounds from their environment to continue their cycle of self-replication. This transition from simple chemical reactions to more complex processes of self-replication was a critical stage in evolution, leading to the formation of the first forms of life. The appearance of self-replicating structures marked the transition from chemical evolution to biological evolution, as these molecules became the foundation for the further development of more complex organisms. In the end, such molecules could not only reproduce themselves, but also adapt to changing environmental conditions, opening the way to evolutionary changes. With each new cycle of self-replication, small changes and mutations occurred, contributing to the diversity of life forms. At this stage, when molecules began to form more complex structures, such as cells, the process of evolution reached a new level. There were billions of years when self-replicating molecules controlled processes that ultimately led to the appearance of multicellular organisms. The earliest forms of life, such as prokaryotes, arose from such molecules that, in the conditions of oceanic depths and hot springs, began to develop complex biochemical pathways. These molecules became the basis for the formation of cell membranes and other organelles necessary for life. The emergence of self-replicating molecules was a turning point that opened the way to the development not only of single-celled organisms, but also of multicellular organisms that populated our planet millions of years later. As these molecules continued to evolve, they began to form complex systems of interactions, leading to the emergence of the first ecosystems. Initially, these ecosystems had a simple structure, but over time they became more complex, and billions of years of evolution led to the diversity of life forms that we observe today. Scientific research shows that as self-replicating molecules became more complex, they began to form not only the simplest cells, but also other structures that became the basis for the diversity of living organisms on Earth. From simple molecules to complex ecosystems, the path was one of the most significant in the history of life. During the formation of the first cellular membranes, certain molecules, such as phospholipids, naturally began to aggregate into thin films, forming structures that can be referred to as primitive vesicles. These vesicles were double-layered molecular structures, with the hydrophobic tails of phospholipids inside and the hydrophilic heads facing outward, creating a barrier that separated the internal contents from the external environment. This process, known as self-assembly, occurred due to the spontaneous interaction of molecules in an aqueous environment, allowing them to form stable structures. Approximately 2 billion years ago, during the Archean era, such membranes began to protect nascent life processes from external influences such as ultraviolet radiation and chemical agents. This protection was critically important for concentrating the necessary molecules and chemical reactions in a limited space, significantly accelerating evolutionary processes. Membranes were not static. They could grow, divide, and fuse, creating increasingly complex structures, which is the basis for the emergence of cells. Research shows that such membrane systems could form microspheres, which in turn served as platforms for the emergence of the first metabolic processes. These primitive cellular structures could combine, forming more complex systems, which contributed to the evolution of the first living organisms. Scientists such as Leslie Orgel emphasized that the presence of membranes made it possible for evolution to occur at the cellular level, as they allowed the isolation and concentration of necessary molecules such as amino acids and nucleotides. The structure of membranes also facilitated the formation of various environments in which important biochemical reactions could occur, which is a key moment in the process of life's origin. For example, molecules encapsulated in membranes could interact more effectively with each other, leading to the formation of the first proteins and nucleic acids necessary for genetic information transfer. Internal membranes could form compartments, allowing the creation of specialized reactions necessary for metabolism. This process of concentrating chemical reactions in a limited space was a decisive moment for the further development of complex life forms, from single-celled organisms to multicellular forms. Membrane structures similar to those that arose in the Archean environment became the prototype for all the cells we know today, and their appearance ensured the first step in the evolution of living organisms on Earth. The process of membrane self-assembly and their ability to undergo dynamic changes became the basis for further biological innovations, such as cell division and specialized cellular functions. The first prokaryotic cells appeared on Earth approximately 3.5 billion years ago and represent the most primitive forms of life. These single-celled organisms, lacking a nucleus and complex internal structures, were inhabitants of the primeval oceans. Their sizes varied from 1 to several tens of micrometers, making them invisible to the naked eye. The structure of prokaryotes was simple. They consisted of a cell membrane, cytoplasm, and DNA, freely located in the cytoplasm, unlike eukaryotes where DNA is enclosed in a nucleus. Prokaryotes could be either aerobic or anaerobic, allowing them to adapt to various environmental conditions. For nutrition, they used simple chemical compounds such as carbon and nitrogen, absorbing them through the cell membrane. The process of photosynthesis, carried out with the help of special molecules such as chlorophyll, allowed some prokaryotes to convert solar energy into chemical energy. A remarkable feature of these cells was their ability to reproduce. Division occurred through binary fission, resulting in one cell dividing into two, which allowed for rapid population growth. These simplest organisms could survive in extreme conditions, such as high temperatures, acidity, and the absence of oxygen. For example, thermophilic bacteria inhabited hot springs, where temperatures reached 120 degrees Celsius, and methanogens existed in anaerobic conditions such as marshy areas. This incredible resilience and adaptability became the foundation for the further evolution of more complex organisms. Their genetic material, despite its simplicity, became the basis for all modern forms of life, demonstrating how even the simplest cellular structures can have a decisive impact on the biosphere of the planet. Prokaryotes, such as bacteria and archaea, continue to play a key role in ecosystems, participating in processes of decomposition and the cycling of nutrients in nature. Stromatolites are among the oldest evidence of life on Earth, representing layered structures formed by colonies of microorganisms, primarily cyanobacteria. These microorganisms, with their photosynthetic properties, created mat layers that, interacting with the surrounding environment, gradually captured sedimentary particles. This process was extremely slow and occurred over thousands of years, allowing stromatolites to serve as geological timekeepers. With each new layer added to the existing ones, stromatolites formed characteristic domes and columns, resembling trees with their annual rings. These structures could grow to several meters in height and reach significant sizes, indicating their longevity. Bacterial mats that formed stromatolites acted as natural filters, purifying water and creating conditions for the life of other organisms. They not only fixed carbon, but also contributed to the formation of oxygen in the atmosphere, which was a crucial moment in the evolution of life on the planet. Stromatolites can be considered the first ecosystems where various types of microorganisms interacted, and they laid the foundations for more complex forms of life. These structures maintained their shape and constituted a significant part of sedimentary rocks, allowing modern scientists to study them and draw conclusions about the climatic conditions and ecosystems that existed billions of years ago. Stromatolites also provide insights into how ancient organisms interacted with their environment, demonstrating how life on Earth evolved in conditions that today seem extreme. Research on stromatolites is conducted at various stages, and they help understand how microorganisms could adapt to different conditions, creating resilient ecosystems. These magnificent structures continue to amaze scientists with their unique properties and importance in ecology and geology. They are not only historical artifacts, but also living evidence of how life on Earth formed and evolved over millions of years. Stromatolites, in essence, are the key to understanding the early stages of life on our planet and their role in shaping the atmosphere and ecosystems. Shark Bay in Australia is home to some of the oldest and most unique stromatolites on the planet. These bacterial colonies, which create structures similar to those that existed billions of years ago, attract the attention of scientists from around the world. In this shallow, highly saline bay, clear water reveals the site of rounded domes and columns formed by cyanobacteria. The stromatolites in Shark Bay grow slowly, adding less than 1 millimeter per year, making them witnesses to geological history over millions of years. What is most fascinating is that they are living fossils, allowing us to look into the distant past of our planet and understand how life has evolved. The stromatolites in Shark Bay consist of layers of sediment formed around bacterial colonies that capture particles of sand and other mineral materials. This interaction creates hard structures that can reach heights of over 3 meters and diameters of tens of meters. In Shark Bay, some of the largest and oldest stromatolites, estimated to be over 3.5 billion years old, are found. These stromatolites are a result of unique ecological conditions that have been preserved due to the isolation of the bay and its high salinity. Additionally, the bay is unique in its ecosystem, where not only stromatolites, but also diverse marine organisms such as mangrove trees, sea turtles, and numerous fish species live. Stromatolites act as indicators of the health of the ecosystem, as they are sensitive to changes in the surrounding environment. Scientists study them to understand past and present climate and ecological changes. In this context, the stromatolites of Shark Bay become not only objects of scientific interest, but also symbols of the resilience of life on Earth in conditions that are extremely unfavorable for most organisms. These living fossils do not just tell us about the past, they demonstrate how life can adapt and survive in conditions of high salinity and low availability of nutrients. In Shark Bay, stromatolites continue to grow and develop, preserving information about ancient ecosystems and the conditions in which they existed. They serve as an important reminder of how quickly the world around us changes and how important it is to preserve such unique ecosystems. The high salinity of the bay and its unique geographical location create ideal conditions for the formation of stromatolites, which are studied by scientists to better understand the evolution of life on Earth. The process of photosynthesis is an extraordinary mechanism by which living organisms convert solar energy into chemical energy, creating nutrients from simple substances such as carbon dioxide and water. This revolutionary process, which emerged around 3 billion years ago, became the foundation for the existence of all known forms of life on Earth. Sunlight, like magical wands, penetrates plant cells, initiating a series of transformations. In this process, energy obtained from the sun is used to synthesize organic molecules, enabling living beings not only to survive but also to develop. Photosynthesis was one of the greatest evolutionary breakthroughs, altering the chemistry of the atmosphere. Carbon dioxide, which was once the main component of the atmosphere, was gradually replaced by oxygen, which in turn paved the way for the formation of more complex forms of life, including animals and ultimately humans. The appearance of oxygen in the atmosphere, made possible by photosynthesis, served as a catalyst for the emergence of multicellular organisms. This event can be considered the beginning of a new era, when life on Earth became more diverse and complex. Approximately 2 billion years ago, the level of oxygen in the atmosphere reached a critical threshold, allowing many forms of life to evolve and adapt to new conditions. It was thanks to photosynthesis that ecosystems emerged on the planet, where plants, absorbing sunlight, produce not only oxygen, but also organic compounds that then serve as food for animals. This process continues to this day, maintaining the balance in ecosystems and supporting the vital activities of all organisms. Currently, photosynthesis is being studied by scientists to understand how its principles can be used to create ecologically clean energy sources. One example is the development of solar panels, which attempt to mimic this natural process. Research shows that photosynthetic organisms can absorb up to 30% of sunlight, indicating how efficiently they use light energy. Despite all the achievements of science, the process of photosynthesis remains one of the most complex and mysterious phenomena of nature, demonstrating how simple elements can lead to the creation of life. This extraordinary mechanism continues to inspire scientists and ecologists around the world, emphasizing the importance of preserving plants and ecosystems that support this process. Ultimately, photosynthesis not only changed the chemical composition of our atmosphere, but also became the basis for all food chains on the planet, providing life to billions of creatures. Cyanobacteria are some of the oldest photosynthetic organisms on Earth, appearing around 3.5 billion years ago. These microorganisms, also known as blue-green algae, possess a unique ability to use solar energy to synthesize organic compounds from carbon dioxide and water. This process, known as photosynthesis, produces oxygen as a byproduct, which acted as a catalyst for changes in Earth's atmosphere. Large colonies of cyanobacteria colored ancient shallow waters in vibrant blue-green hues, creating landscapes that were not only beautiful but also crucial for the planet's future. These tiny organisms, forming dense layers on the water's surface, created microbial mats that could reach significant thickness and area. Research shows that cyanobacteria could cover vast territories, contributing to the accumulation of oxygen in the atmosphere. Over millions of years, they transformed the chemical composition of the atmosphere, leading to what is known as the oxygen catastrophe around 2.5 billion years ago. This period marked a sharp increase in the oxygen content of the atmosphere, laying the foundation for the emergence of aerobic organisms. Today, cyanobacteria still play a critical role in ecosystems, contributing to soil formation and maintaining the balance of carbon in the oceans. Their abilities in photosynthesis are still being studied, opening new horizons for biotechnology and ecology. These microorganisms not only altered the composition of Earth's atmosphere, but also became the ancestors of all modern plants, contributing to the evolution of life on the planet. Oxygen catastrophe, also known as the oxygen crisis, represents one of the most dramatic turning points in Earth's history. This event occurred due to the accumulation of oxygen in the atmosphere, which was released by cyanobacteria during photosynthesis. As a result, the oxygen level in the atmosphere began to rise, leading to a significant change in the chemical composition of both the atmosphere and the oceans. For ancient organisms that had evolved in anoxic environments, oxygen was a true poison. Many anaerobic microorganisms, such as methanogens and sulfur bacteria, could not adapt to the new chemical environment, and consequently, many of them went extinct. The paradox lies in the fact that a gas vital for the majority of modern life forms became deadly for the inhabitants of Earth at that time. Oxygen, a byproduct of the photosynthetic activity of cyanobacteria, began to interact with various biomolecules, breaking them down. Specifically, oxygen oxidized proteins and other organic compounds, leading to their destruction. This resulted in many species that could exist in low oxygen conditions being on the brink of extinction. In their place, more resilient organisms emerged, capable of using oxygen for respiration and energy production. The appearance of aerobic organisms, such as fungi and animals, became possible precisely due to this change. Simultaneously, changes began to occur in the oceans. Oxygen started to dissolve in water, forming oxygen zones that attracted new marine species. As a result, ecosystems began to evolve, paving the way for more complex forms of life. The appearance of multicellular organisms, such as algae and the first metazoans, became possible due to the oxygen that now filled the oceans. While some organisms went extinct, others, thanks to their adaptive mechanisms, began to develop and fill the niches left vacant by the disappearance of anaerobes. These changes laid the foundation for further evolution of life on Earth, creating conditions for the emergence of plants, animals, and ultimately humans. The oxygen catastrophe, therefore, served as a catalyst for biological diversity on the planet, altering not only the atmosphere but also all ecosystems. Scientific research shows that the oxygen level in the atmosphere reached approximately 21%, which became a critical threshold for the emergence of aerobic life forms. The process of ion oxidation in the oceans during the oxygen catastrophe was one of the key events that altered the chemical composition of seawater and the formation of ocean floor sediments. Before the oxygenation period, iron existed in the form of soluble bivalent ions, giving ancient seas a greenish or grayish hue. However, with the increase in atmospheric oxygen content, which occurred around 2.5 billion years ago, there was a significant change in the chemical environment of the oceans. Soluble iron began to react with oxygen, forming insoluble iron oxides such as hematite, Fe2O3, and magnetite, Fe3O4. These oxides precipitated onto the ocean floor as sediment, forming characteristic banded iron formations, which became important geological indicators of this historical period. Banded iron formations, or BIFs, consist of alternating layers of iron oxides and silica, often with striking red and gray bands, creating a vivid visual contrast. These deposits began to form under conditions where the oxygen level in the oceans reached critical values, and iron began to precipitate in significant quantities. Scientific research shows that in some places, such as Brazil and Australia, these formations can reach thicknesses of several hundred meters and date back to 3 to 2 billion years ago. Gradually, the oceans changed. Greenish and grey waters rich in dissolved iron began to clear of these ions, acquiring the pure blue color we observe today. These changes in ocean color reflect not only chemical processes, but also evolutionary changes in life on the planet. As the appearance of oxygen in the atmosphere facilitated the development of aerobic organisms that began to occupy new ecological niches. The oxygen catastrophe not only altered the atmosphere, but also had a powerful impact on marine ecosystems, allowing marine fauna and flora to develop in new conditions. The adaptation of life to an oxygen-rich atmosphere was one of the most significant biological revolutions on Earth, occurring more than 2 billion years ago. Some organisms, such as aerobic bacteria, were able to develop enzymes like catalase and peroxidase, which neutralize hydrogen peroxide formed during the metabolism of oxygen. These enzymes allowed microorganisms not only to survive, but also to actively use oxygen for energy production. Meanwhile, other organisms, like cyanobacteria, developed photosynthetic mechanisms that used solar energy to convert carbon dioxide and water into glucose, releasing oxygen as a byproduct. This led to the emergence of a vast diversity of life forms. During the period between 2 billion and 1 billion years ago, when there was enough oxygen in the atmosphere to support aerobic metabolism, a great adaptive radiation began. Multicellular organisms, such as algae, appeared, which could effectively use oxygen for growth. These algae, for example, of the genus Chlorophyta, became the main producers of oxygen in the oceans, providing conditions for further evolution. Examples of new life forms that could thrive in the changed conditions were the first animals, such as sponges and jellyfish, which began to actively use oxygen for respiration. Around 600 million years ago, significant changes occurred in the planet's ecosystems, and new organisms, such as trilobites and other crustaceans, were able to adapt to the oxygen-rich environment, developing complex organ systems and metabolic pathways that allowed them to efficiently use the available oxygen. These changes paved the way for the development of more complex and energy-efficient organisms, which in turn led to the appearance of the first vertebrates and subsequently to the emergence of terrestrial animals. Observing the evolution, one can see how oxygen became a catalyst for the diversity of life, and how organisms gradually adapted to new conditions, using oxygen as a crucial element in their metabolic processes. As a result, the oxygen-rich atmosphere became the basis for the formation of complex ecosystems that we observe today, where each organism occupies its niche, using oxygen to sustain life in various forms and sizes. The changes in the atmosphere caused by the oxygen catastrophe marked the beginning of a new era in the history of life on Earth. A eukaryotic cell is a complex structure that differs significantly from prokaryotic cells. It contains a nucleus where the genetic material is stored, as well as various internal structures that perform specialized functions. Imagine a eukaryotic cell as a miniature city, where each compartment or organelle performs a unique task, much like factories and control centers in a metropolis. The nucleus, surrounded by two membranes, can be thought of as the city hall, where all important decisions and information about how the city functions are kept. Eukaryotes emerged approximately 1 billion years ago, and their appearance marked a revolutionary leap in the complexity of living systems, paving the way for the evolution of higher forms of life, such as plants, animals, and fungi. Unlike simple prokaryotes, which have only one enclosed area for storing their DNA, eukaryotes can separate genetic material from other cellular processes, allowing them to manage their life activities more efficiently. This complex cellular organization enabled eukaryotes to develop various structures and functions, ultimately leading to the formation of complex multicellular organisms. Scientific research shows that the presence of a nucleus and organelles, such as mitochondria and chloroplasts, not only increases the efficiency of cellular processes, but also allows cells to work together, forming tissues and organs. Eukaryotes provided new pathways for metabolism and substance exchange, opening doors to biological diversity. In particular, mitochondria, which are the power plants of cells, supply energy to all cellular processes, while chloroplasts found in plants carry out photosynthesis, converting solar energy into chemical energy. These cells have diameters ranging from 10 to 100 micrometers, allowing them to be large enough to carry out complex processes while remaining small enough to maintain a high level of metabolic exchange. The appearance of eukaryotes was a pivotal moment in the history of life on Earth, as they became the foundation for all multicellular organisms we know today. Eukaryotes opened new horizons for biological evolution, and their complex systems of management and specialized functions became the basis for the formation of ecosystems that exist on the planet. The impact of eukaryotes on the biosphere is immeasurable, as they participate in key processes such as the carbon cycle and the water cycle, ensuring the stability and diversity of life on Earth. The theory of endosymbiosis, proposed in the early 20th century by scientists Alexander Greve and later developed by Lynn Margulis, explains the origin of mitochondria as a result of symbiotic relationships between different cells. Approximately 2 billion years ago, when more complex organisms began to appear on Earth, ancient aerobic bacteria that effectively used oxygen for energy were present in the oceans. These bacteria, such as the genus Rickettsia, possessed a unique ability for aerobic respiration, allowing them to survive in conditions where the oxygen level was gradually increasing. During evolution, larger cells, the predecessors of modern eukaryotes, engulfed these bacteria, but instead of digesting them, formed symbiotic relationships with them. This process, known as endosymbiosis, allowed cells to utilize the energy produced by the captured bacteria. Thus, mitochondria became true energy stations for cells, providing them with the necessary amount of ATP, the main source of energy for all cellular processes. This symbiosis was beneficial for both parties. The bacteria obtained a protected place to live, and the cells were able to increase their energy efficiency. Interestingly, mitochondria retained their own DNA, which differs from the nuclear DNA of the cell and has a bacterial origin. This DNA indicates that mitochondria were once independent organisms capable of reproduction. Moreover, mitochondria divide independently of the cell, which confirms their independence and relationship with bacteria. Modern research shows that this endosymbiotic connection was so successful that mitochondria became an integral part of cells in all multicellular organisms. The complex structure of mitochondria, including internal membranes that form crystalline structures to increase surface area, also indicates a high level of evolutionary adaptation. As a result of symbiosis, eukaryotes emerged, leading to the diversity of life on Earth. Mitochondria, acting as energy stations, continue to influence the metabolism of the organism, and their dysfunction can lead to various diseases. For example, mutations in mitochondrial DNA are associated with diseases such as myopathy and neurodegenerative disorders. Mitochondria serve as key elements not only in energy exchange, but also in the process of apoptosis, underscoring their importance in maintaining normal cellular function. The complexity and diversity of mitochondrial functions make them indispensable for the existence of multicellular organisms, continuing to be a subject of active research in biology and medicine. Chloroplasts, responsible for photosynthesis in plants, originated from ancient cyanobacteria that were engulfed by eukaryotic cells around 1 billion years ago through a process known as endosymbiosis. This symbiotic relationship allowed cells to use solar energy directly, marking a true evolutionary breakthrough. Cyanobacteria, with their ability to convert solar light into chemical energy, became internal solar batteries for cells, significantly enhancing their energy efficiency. As a result, eukaryotes, with their new capabilities, began to actively develop and colonize diverse habitats. A crucial step in this process was the emergence of the first algae, which, due to their photosynthetic activity, started producing oxygen, leading to significant changes in Earth's atmosphere. Around 12 million years ago, algae became the ancestors of all terrestrial plants, paving the way for the formation of complex ecosystems. This symbiotic process not only provided cells with a new source of energy, but also made a substantial contribution to the biosphere by increasing the amount of oxygen in the atmosphere, enabling the existence of multicellular organisms. Thus, chloroplasts, as a result of a successful evolutionary union, became the foundation for the existence of all plants that form ecosystems on Earth. Chloroplasts contain chlorophyll, a pigment that absorbs solar energy and converts it into chemical energy, allowing plants to produce glucose from carbon dioxide and water using solar energy. Contemporary research shows that this endosymbiotic relationship was a pivotal moment in the evolution of life on Earth, as it not only gave rise to algae, but also to all terrestrial plants, which form the basis of nutrition for many living organisms. Multicellularity is one of the most significant revolutions in biology, occurring more than 800 million years ago. This transition from single cells to complex multicellular organisms can be compared to the emergence of human societies, where individuals unite to achieve a common goal. Initially, cells existed independently, performing all necessary functions for survival. However, over time, they began to form colonies, where each cell retained its individuality but began to act in the interest of the group. This union allowed cells to jointly use resources, significantly increasing their efficiency. Over time, further complexity developed. Cells began to specialize, leading to the formation of various types of tissues and organs. For example, some cells began to absorb nutrients, others to protect against external threats, and others to reproduce. Specialization allowed cells not only to use resources more effectively, but also to adapt to different environmental conditions. As a result, true multicellular organisms emerged, where each cell, giving up its individuality, contributed to the common good. This process is reminiscent of how people organize into communities to work together on projects that cannot be accomplished alone. Furthermore, complex multicellular organisms gained an advantage in the form of a protective mechanism. If one part of the organism is threatened, others can continue to function, increasing the chances of the entire organism's survival. Over millions of years, multicellularity became the basis for an enormous diversity of life forms on Earth, including plants, animals, and fungi, each with different survival strategies. As a result, multicellular organisms can reach large sizes, such as blue whales, which can weigh up to 200 tons and reach lengths of up to 30 meters. Their ability to specialize and interact between cells also contributed to the development of complex ecosystems, where each organism occupies its niche and interacts with other species. Multicellularity, therefore, not only changed the very nature of life, but also created conditions for the emergence of complex interrelationships in the biosphere, allowing living organisms to adapt to the most diverse living conditions. The Ediacaran biota, which existed around 600 million years ago, represents a mysterious and unusual stage in the evolution of life on Earth. These early complex multicellular organisms, which inhabited ancient oceans, lacked skeletons and had soft, sometimes strange forms, resembling discs, feathers, or quilted mattresses. For example, one of the most famous creatures, Dickinsonia, could reach lengths of up to 1 meter, with a symmetrical body divided into segments, giving it the appearance of a giant sea star. Other representatives of the Ediacaran biota, such as Charnia, looked like vertically growing plants and could reach heights of up to half a meter, attaching themselves to the sea floor. These creatures did not move quickly. Their slow lifestyle on the sea floor allowed them to absorb nutrients from water and sediment, making them dependent on their environment for survival. Ediacarans, as a rule, inhabited shallow ocean zones where conditions were stable enough for their existence. Their enigmatic biology sparks debate among scientists. Many of these organisms do not fit into familiar categories of animals, challenging our understanding of evolution. For instance, research conducted in 2008 showed that some organisms had features reminiscent of both animals and plants, raising questions about the diversity and complexity of life in those distant times. The sizes of these creatures varied from several centimeters to a meter, further emphasizing their uniqueness. The Ediacaran biota, which existed before the Cambrian explosion, was the first attempt by nature to create multicellular organisms that could adapt to various conditions. These creatures may have been predecessors of more complex forms of life, such as trilobites and other marine organisms that appeared later. The significance of the Ediacaran biota lies not only in its diversity, but also in the fact that it provides new insights into the evolutionary processes that occurred on Earth. Their existence indicates that life was already capable of experiments, and nature was striving to create new forms that later became the basis for more complex ecosystems. Despite the fact that many of these organisms went extinct, Their traces remain in fossils found in places like Ediacara in Australia. In this region, unique fossilized remains have been discovered, allowing scientists to reconstruct the appearance and way of life of these primitive creatures. The Ediacaran biota remains one of the most mysterious chapters in the history of life on Earth. The Cambrian explosion, which occurred around 500 million years ago, was one of the most significant periods in Earth's history, marked by a rapid increase in the diversity of life on the planet. Over a relatively short period of about 20 million years, almost all modern animal groups appeared in the oceans. During this time, evolution seemed to engage in experiments, creating new forms of life with various survival strategies. Oceans, previously inhabited by simple organisms, were suddenly filled with creatures with shells, exoskeletons, and even jaws. For instance, trilobites, which first appeared during this period, had a complex body structure and hard exoskeletons, making them some of the earliest successful predators on the planet. Fossil finds indicate that some trilobites reached lengths of up to 15 centimeters, which was a significant size for the time. Additionally, the Cambrian seas were home to other remarkable creatures, such as anomalocarids, which could grow up to 1 meter in length and possessed unique visual organs that allowed them to hunt other animals. This was a period when life on Earth became astonishingly diverse, ranging from simple forms like sponges and mollusks to more complex organisms like the ancestors of modern arthropods and vertebrates. Mollusks that emerged during this time began to occupy new niches, developing shells that protected them from predators. Scientists believe that during the Cambrian period, there were more than 50 mass radiations, which accelerated evolutionary changes and created new ecosystems that were much more complex and diverse than those that existed before. This era is also notable for the fact that many of the new forms of life began to exhibit segmentation and specialized body parts, which laid the foundation for future evolution. One of the most remarkable discoveries made in the Burgess Shale in Canada allowed scientists to see what some of these ancient creatures looked like. Here, well-preserved fossils were found that show that some of the early animals had complex eyes and even precursors of limbs. Scientists note that the Cambrian explosion not only increased the number of species, but also significantly altered ecosystems, creating new relationships between predators and prey, leading to the formation of the first more complex food webs. This period became the basis for the further development of life on Earth, opening new horizons for evolution. According to estimates, at this time, more than 130 new animal groups appeared in the oceans, fundamentally changing the biosphere of the planet. Burgess Shale is a unique geological formation located in the Canadian province of British Columbia, which has provided a window into the Cambrian period. The layers of these shales formed around 500 million years ago, and it is here that scientists have discovered some of the best preserved fossils from that time. Unique conditions, such as the absence of oxygen and rapid sedimentary processes, have contributed to the preservation not only of the hard parts of organisms, but also their soft tissues, which is a rare occurrence in paleontology. Since the discovery of the Burgess Shale in 1913, paleontologists like David Edwards and Norman Foster have studied this site and discovered over 100,000 fossils, representing around 15 different types of organisms. Among them are strange creatures like Opabinia, with its 5 eyes and long, flexible body, and Marblia, which resembles modern marine worms but has a unique structure not found in living organisms. These findings have changed our understanding of early animal evolution, providing information about the diversity of life forms that existed during that period. For example, the existence of the ancestors of modern arthropods and mollusks has become evident thanks to such specimens. The vast diversity of forms and functions of these organisms indicates that early ecosystems were much more complex than previously thought. For instance, the discovery of early predators like Anomalocaris shows that complex food chains already existed in the Cambrian period. These findings also emphasize the importance of the Burgess Shale in understanding evolution, serving as a catalyst for new theories about how complex organisms arose. The preserved soft tissues and complex anatomical structures allow scientists to study not only the evolutionary relationships, but also the lifestyle, ecology, and behavioral characteristics of these organisms. This unique treasure trove of information continues to attract researchers from around the world, underscoring the significance of the Burgess Shale in the history of science. Since their discovery, More than 100 species of organisms have been described based on specimens from these shales, placing them at the center of Cambrian biota research. The Paleozoic era spans nearly 300 million years, beginning around 600 million years ago and ending approximately 250 million years ago. It is a pivotal period in Earth's history, marked by significant changes in life on the planet. During this time, the foundation of modern biodiversity was established as ecosystems became more complex and new ecological niches emerged. Key changes included the transition from simple single-celled organisms to multicellular forms that began to inhabit diverse environments. Throughout this era, Earth's organic diversity increased, and life gradually colonized not only oceans but also land. The planet's conditions were varied, including warm climatic zones and extensive shallow seas, which fostered the development of complex ecosystems. For example, coral reefs began to form through the interaction of various marine organisms like sponges and mollusks. These reefs became homes for numerous species and played a crucial role in the creation of new ecosystems. Evolutionary innovations, such as the development of hard skeletons in organisms, allowed life to adapt to diverse conditions. Concurrently with the expansion of marine ecosystems, the colonization of land began. Early plants like mosses started appearing on continents, opening new possibilities for other forms of life. The emergence of the first terrestrial organisms, including early vertebrates, was a significant step in evolution. This was a time when animals began adapting to life outside water, developing new physiological mechanisms like lungs and limbs, enabling them to move on land. These processes led to the formation of a complex network of interactions between organisms, contributing to the development of ecosystems with various trophic levels. As a result, life on Earth developed new strategies for survival and reproduction, paving the way for future biodiversity. By the end of the Paleozoic era, most modern groups of vertebrates already existed, underscoring the significance of this period in the formation of the modern animal world. During this time, the first forests appeared, altering the atmosphere by increasing oxygen levels and facilitating the further development of complex life forms. Thus, the Paleozoic era not only serves as the foundation for our understanding of evolution, but also marks a critical turning point in Earth's history, when life moved beyond the aquatic realm and began to colonize new territories. At this time, Earth was home to giant plants like ferns and conifers, which formed vast forests, and these ecosystems became habitats for numerous organisms. A significant development was the appearance of the first insects, which not only began to inhabit terrestrial ecosystems, but also became important pollinators for flowering plants, influencing the development of flora and fauna. The Paleozoic era concluded with a major extinction event that wiped out around 90% of all species. But it was during this time that the foundations were laid for the diverse world of life that we know today. The Silurian period, which lasted approximately from 430 to 410 million years ago, was a time of significant changes on Earth when life began to make its first steps onto land. During this time, simple terrestrial plants such as mosses and algae appeared, starting to colonize coastal areas where moist soil provided favorable conditions for their existence. These plants did not have roots as we know them today and resembled low-growing green stems, rising above the wet earth like the vanguard of a great land conquest. They had to adapt to entirely new conditions, which was no easy task. The first land plants faced challenges such as the need to protect themselves from drying out, which required them to develop mechanisms for retaining moisture. To achieve this, they began to form special structures that minimized water evaporation. In the low-gravity conditions, these plants also had to support their bodies, leading to the development of rigid cell walls and changes in the structure of their tissues. The spread of spores became crucial, and these plants began to use air currents to disperse them, marking a significant step in their evolution. This allowed them to leave their native habitats and colonize new territories. At this time, many modern ecosystems did not yet exist, and terrestrial plants formed the basis for future forests and meadows. The Silurian period was a crucial stage in the history of life on Earth, when plants began to conquer the land, and their adaptation to new conditions paved the way for the further development of more complex life forms. The first land plants, such as xylophytes, were primitive but extremely important organisms that laid the foundation for the formation of future ecosystems. These plants had the ability to photosynthesize, which allowed them to produce oxygen necessary for life on the planet. The Silurian period was an era when life ventured beyond water bodies and began to explore new horizons, thereby setting the stage for further biological diversity. The Devonian period, which lasted from approximately 420 to 360 million years ago, was truly the age of fish. During this time, ancient oceans teemed with a variety of fish species, ranging from small creatures covered in bony plates to massive predators with powerful jaws capable of tearing their prey apart. Jawless fish such as the mixin and lamprey carved out their niche by using sucker mouths to feed on dead organisms, allowing them to survive in conditions where other species struggled. The appearance of armored fish like ostracoderms marked a significant step in evolution, as they possessed robust bony coverings that protected them from predators. Cartilaginous fish, such as sharks and rays, began to develop during this period, exhibiting unique adaptations like the ability for swift hunting and maneuverability in water. Bony fish, including the ancestors of modern fish, began to dominate ecosystems, evolving diverse forms, sizes, and behavioral strategies. Devonian seas also included vast coral reefs that served as homes for numerous marine creatures, including mollusks, crabs, and a variety of invertebrates. These reefs, formed by colonies of corals, created complex ecosystems where intense competition for resources occurred. In deep-sea zones, strange bioluminescent predators like the Deinoceras inhabited, using bioluminescence to attract prey in the dark depths of the ocean. Studying the fossilized remains of Devonian fish, such as those found in famous deposits in Scotland and Germany, scientists discovered that their sizes ranged from a few centimeters to over 6 meters in length. This period also saw a significant increase in the diversity of fish forms, contributing to the further development of marine ecosystems. By the end of the Devonian period, many fish species had adapted to occupy new ecological niches, paving the way for further evolution in the Mesozoic and Paleogene periods. During the Devonian period, which began around 400 million years ago, there was a breakthrough in evolution when the first tetrapods began to conquer land. These transitional creatures, such as Tiktaalik, existed approximately 360 million years ago and were a unique combination of fish and land animal characteristics. Tiktaalik had gills for breathing underwater but also possessed primitive lungs, allowing it to breathe at the surface. Its fins were not just for swimming. They evolved into limbs that could support its weight on shallow water and even on land, significantly increasing its chances of survival in changing environments. Acanthostega, another well-known representative of this transitional stage, lived around 360 million years ago and had similar features. It had 8 limbs that were the early stages of true legs. These creatures inhabited muddy coastal zones and drying-up water bodies, where their ability to move on land gave them an evolutionary advantage. In such conditions, they could avoid aquatic predators and search for food on land. Both Tiktaalik and Acanthostega had a shortened snout with teeth, indicating a predatory lifestyle. They hunted small fish and invertebrates. Research shows that their habitat was full of vegetation and shallow ecosystems, which facilitated their adaptation to new conditions. The transition from aquatic to terrestrial life opened up new ecological niches, and these first tetrapods became the founders of all terrestrial fauna. An important aspect of their anatomy was the presence of ribs, which helped support internal organs during movement on land. Tiktaalik, which was about 2.5 meters long, demonstrated various adaptive changes, including a developed chest and changes in fin structure, allowing it to confidently move in shallow water bodies. These changes became the basis for the further evolution of amphibians and reptiles, which later populated the land. Carboniferous forests, which existed approximately 300 million years ago, were unique ecosystems that occupied vast territories on Earth. These wet and swampy forests differed from modern forests in their diversity and structure. At a time when flowering plants were just beginning their evolution, Carboniferous forests were home to spore-bearing plants such as giant ferns, horsetails, and club mosses, which formed a green canopy up to 30 meters above the ground. Their enormous size and dense crowns created dense shade and contributed to the formation of a specific microclimate, where high humidity and warm climate fostered a variety of life forms. These forests had a completely different appearance. Instead of the familiar woody plants, Their main inhabitants were spore-bearing plants, which reproduced through spores rather than seeds. This created a unique landscape where soft, mossy layers of decaying plants served as an ideal habitat for numerous ancient organisms, including insects and small animals. In Carboniferous forests, giant tree ferns reached up to 7 meters in height, and their leaves could grow up to 2 meters long. These forests were also abundant in mosses and aquatic plants, which covered the soil and formed thick layers of humus, contributing to further carbon accumulation. During the Carboniferous period, the climate was warm and humid, which led to the formation of extensive swamps where these forests were located. Since there were no flowering plants at that time, the ecosystem was focused exclusively on spore-bearing plants, creating a unique flora and fauna. These forests were the primary source of coal, which formed as a result of the long decomposition of vegetation, and it is this process that has given us significant reserves of fossil fuel. A significant aspect of Carboniferous forests was their impact on the atmosphere, as they produced a large amount of oxygen, which contributed to the evolution of new animal species, including the first reptiles. These ecosystems left their mark not only in geology, but also in biology, influencing the development of all life on Earth. Carboniferous forests, with their unique flora and fauna, became the basis for many modern ecosystems, although their appearance and structure were completely different. During the Carboniferous period, which lasted approximately from 360 to 299 million years ago, Earth was home to remarkable giant insects. For instance, the dragonflies of that time, known as Meganeura, had wingspans of up to 70 centimeters. These predatory insects soared over ancient swamps, snatching small animals from the air. Their powerful wings and razor-sharp jaws made them formidable hunters. Meganeura could reach speeds of up to 35 kilometers per hour, allowing them to easily catch their prey. During the same period, other giants existed, such as centipedes reaching lengths of over 2 meters. These creatures, known as Arthroplasta, could leisurely crawl through the undergrowth and dig burrows in soft soil, leaving distinctive tracks in the form of deep furrows. Their segmented bodies allowed them to be very flexible and agile. Giant scorpions, such as Paleodictis, also inhabited the Earth, with lengths of up to 1 meter. These predators were not only terrifying in appearance, but also wielded their pincers with incredible force, hunting small vertebrates and invertebrates. Spiders of that time, such as Megatropoda, also impressed with their size. Some could reach a diameter of 20 centimeters, with their agile webs dangling from trees, waiting for their prey. The cause of this gigantism among insects was the high concentration of oxygen in the atmosphere, reaching more than 30%, which allowed their lungs to function effectively. This created ideal conditions for the growth and development of large organisms, as oxygen was essential for metabolism. These incredible creatures left a significant mark on history, and their remains have been found in fossil deposits worldwide, including famous sites in Germany and the United States. Findings such as wing imprints and entire specimens show the diversity of forms and sizes of these insects. It is important to note that gigantism was not limited to insects. It also affected other groups of animals of that time. However, insects became the most striking representatives of this phenomenon, making them objects of study for paleontologists and biologists. Research continues, and each new discovery brings us closer to understanding the ecosystems of the Carboniferous period and their inhabitants. The formation of coal seams is a complex and lengthy process that began more than 300 million years ago during the Carbon era. At that time, Earth was home to vast tropical forests consisting mainly of ferns, conifers, and other plants that thrived in conditions of high humidity. When these plants died, their remains fell onto waterlogged soil, rich in water. In this environment, there was insufficient oxygen to fully decompose the organic material. As a result, plant remains began to accumulate slowly, forming what is known as peat. This process occurred over millions of years, with layer upon layer of peat accumulating under the pressure of overlying soil and sedimentary rocks. With increasing depth and pressure, peat gradually transformed into coal. At various stages of this transformation, several types of coal are distinguished. From brown coal to anthracite, which has the highest carbon content and energy value. Temperature and pressure acting on peat led to its dehydration and transformation into coal, which can contain between 40 and 80% carbon. The most significant coal deposits formed in large bogs, such as those that once existed in the territories of modern-day USA and Europe. As a result of this multi-century process, modern coal mines can be considered time machines, allowing us to extract and utilize solar energy stored by plants hundreds of millions of years ago. According to estimates, coal extracted from mines can contain solar energy captured by plants through photosynthesis over millions of years, making coal a vital source of energy for humanity. There are coal mines in the world, such as the Kaskli mine in Poland, which has been in operation since the early 19th century and continues to extract coal today, being one of the largest in Europe. The Permian extinction, which occurred around 260 million years ago, was the greatest mass extinction in Earth's history, wiping out nearly 95% of all species on the planet. This catastrophic event marked the transition from the Paleozoic era to the Mesozoic era and left behind a void that could not be filled for millions of years. At this time, Earth's biosphere was on the brink of collapse. Oceans were overflowing with dead organisms, and on land, silence reigned, broken only by the rare sounds of the few survivors. The underwater world, once teeming with life, became a gloomy graveyard, where coral reefs and marine reptiles like plesiosaurs and ichthyosaurs disappeared. On land, forests, which had been green oases, were destroyed, leaving behind vast expanses where ancient ferns and seed plants had once dominated. The animals that survived this apocalypse found themselves in conditions that were unimaginable. Ecosystems were shattered, and resources were depleted. This nightmare for life on Earth lasted for around 1 million years before recovery began, which was slow and painful. It took millions of years for ecosystems to recover to the level of diversity that existed before the catastrophe. Scientific research shows that ecosystems took at least 100 million years to recover, highlighting the depth of the catastrophe. As a result of this extinction, new forms of life emerged, which later gave rise to dinosaurs and mammals. The recovery of the biosphere after the Permian extinction was a complex process that required time to repopulate the planet with life. Periods of adaptation and evolution were necessary to form new ecosystems that could survive in the changed conditions. The Permian extinction did not just destroy most species, but also opened the way to new possibilities, creating a foundation for evolution. This event demonstrated how fragile life on our planet is and how quickly it can be wiped off its surface. Fossil records show that after the extinction, new types of ecosystems emerged, such as coniferous forests that began to dominate during the Mesozoic era. An important aspect of the Permian extinction was that it not only affected marine life, but also impacted terrestrial ecosystems. Scientific research continues to confirm that this extinction was a catastrophic turning point in Earth's history, where life was almost entirely wiped out, and recovery was slow and agonizing. The recovery after this event became a crucial stage in evolution, shaping the appearance of future ecosystems. Each new discovery in the field of paleontology helps to understand how this recovery took place and what role the surviving species played in restoring diversity to the planet. The ecosystems that arose after the Permian extinction became the foundation for further development of life on Earth. Siberian traps represent one of the most significant volcanic events in Earth's history, occurring approximately 250 million years ago. This catastrophic eruption lasted for tens of thousands of years and covered vast territories, with an area comparable to modern-day Europe. Volcanic lava flows that swept the land reached thicknesses of several kilometers, creating extensive lava plateaus. The eruptions took place in the region now known as Siberia, and as a result of their activity, enormous volumes of carbon dioxide and sulfur-containing compounds, such as sulfur dioxide, were released into the atmosphere. These gases contributed to the formation of acid rain, which had a negative impact on the ecosystems of the time. Scientists like Dr. David Montgomery from the University of Washington assert that these volcanic catastrophes could have triggered a cascade of changes in the atmosphere and oceans, leading to a sharp decrease in oxygen levels and changes in the chemical composition of seawater. During the eruptions, approximately 3 million cubic kilometers of magma were released, creating a dark, smoky sky and significantly increasing global temperatures, creating a greenhouse effect. The climate changes resulting from this process could have led to mass extinctions, including the disappearance of more than 90% of all species on the planet. Volcanic activities also contributed to the formation of new minerals and changes in the landscape, affecting the migration and survival of many species. Scientific research shows that such events ultimately altered the chemical structure of the oceans, which could have been the cause of the disappearance of coral reefs and other marine ecosystems that were in a vulnerable state. The Siberian traps not only caused catastrophic changes, but also played a key role in the formation of new ecosystems after the Permian extinction. The scale of these events continues to be a topic of scientific debate, highlighting the importance of studying volcanic activity as one of the factors contributing to global changes in the biosphere. The Siberian traps left behind traces that archaeologists and geologists continue to study today to understand how the fiery depths of Earth shaped life on the planet. The Mesozoic era, spanning from 250 to 65 million years ago, represents a unique middle age in Earth's history, situated between the two great mass extinctions, the Permian and the Cretaceous-Paleogene. This period is characterized by the recovery of ecosystems following catastrophic changes caused by the Permian extinction, which saw the demise of over 95% of all species on the planet. In the Mesozoic, we observe life slowly returning, filling the ecological niches left vacant. During this time, reptiles become the dominant group of organisms, though this does not mean the Mesozoic was exclusively an era of reptiles. Instead, it was a time of significant evolutionary innovations among many groups of animals and plants. For example, in the Triassic period, which began around 250 million years ago, the first dinosaurs, such as Eoraptor and Herrerasaurus, appear and rapidly diversify. These creatures occupy various ecological niches, from predators to herbivores, leading to the emergence of numerous new life forms. In the Jurassic period, which lasted from 150 to 145 million years ago, dinosaurs reached their peak. They developed various adaptations, including enormous sizes, like Argentinosaurus, which could reach lengths of up to 30 meters, and complex behaviors, such as the pack hunting of Velociraptor. Meanwhile, marine life also undergoes significant changes. Ammonites flourish and become important indicators for geologists, while marine reptiles like plesiosaurs and ichthyosaurs dominate the oceans. In the Mesozoic, plants also thrive, including conifers and ferns, which become the primary components of ecosystems. In the Cretaceous period, which began around 130 million years ago, we see the appearance of flowering plants, which radically alter ecosystems by providing new sources of food and shelter for various animals. Examples include plants from the Magnoliaceae family, which began to appear during this time and became the ancestors of modern flowering plants. The Mesozoic also marks an important stage for mammals, which, despite remaining small and nocturnal, began to evolve and diversify, laying the foundation for modern mammals. Examples include mammals like Morganucodon, which lived in the Jurassic period and had primitive features similar to modern shrews. The increase in biodiversity during the Mesozoic created complex ecosystems where each group played a role in maintaining ecological balance. This was a period when life on Earth, like a phoenix rising from the ashes, rebounded from mass extinctions, creating new forms and adaptations that would form the basis for further evolution. Just as new plants grow after forest fires, the Mesozoic was a time of natural experiments where new species filled the vacant niches. This period lasted nearly 185 million years and ended with a catastrophe that brought the era of dinosaurs to a close. But the Mesozoic itself was not just an era of reptiles. It was an epoch rich in evolutionary changes and innovations that prepared the ground for the emergence of modern biodiversity on Earth. Towards the end of the Cretaceous period, around 65 million years ago, we see significant changes occurring on the planet that would lead to a new chapter in the history of life. The Triassic period, which began around 240 million years ago and lasted until 200 million years ago, was an era in which life on Earth recovered from the largest mass extinction in history, the Permian extinction. This event, which occurred around 250 million years ago, wiped out nearly 95% of all marine species and 75% of land-based species. Landscapes previously teeming with life turned into desolate wastelands where silence reigned. Over millions of years, under the pressure of conditions caused by the extinction, ecosystems began to slowly recover. Surviving groups of organisms began to fill the vacant ecological niches. For instance, among the first new forms of life were small mammals and reptiles that adapted to various environmental conditions. At this time, large arid regions with hot and dry climates existed in the north of the supercontinent Pangaea, while more humid tropical forests were forming in the south. Among the new groups of reptiles that began to develop were the ancestors of dinosaurs, the archosaurs, which emerged due to evolutionary changes resulting from adaptation to new conditions. They began to occupy various ecological niches, leading to diversification that ultimately determined the evolution of many animal groups. By the end of the Triassic period, the first dinosaurs, such as Eoraptor and Herrerasaurus, had already appeared and began to dominate ecosystems. Crocodiles and turtles also began their history during this time, sharing common ancestral lines with dinosaurs. Crocodiles like Protosuchus began to adapt to semi-aquatic conditions, while turtles, such as Progonocales, demonstrated the characteristic protective shell of this period. The climate of the Triassic period was extremely diverse, but in general it was characterized by high temperatures that contributed to the formation of large deserts. This hot and dry climate had a significant impact on the flora and fauna of the time. Plants such as conifers and ferns began to dominate ecosystems, providing food for the newly appearing species. These plants were well adapted to arid conditions, allowing them to survive in conditions of water scarcity. Thus, during the Triassic period, the world was on the path to recovery from the catastrophe, with new forms of life slowly but surely filling the vacant ecological niches and creating a foundation for future biodiversity. Plants and animals found in this epoch began to develop and adapt, ultimately leading to the prosperity of dinosaurs in the Jurassic period and beyond. An example of this is the fact that in the Triassic period, there already existed species like Coelophysis, which reached lengths of up to 4 meters, and was one of the first predatory dinosaurs actively hunting small animals. Pangaea was an ancient supercontinent that existed approximately 300 million years ago and began to break apart around 180 million years ago. This gigantic mass of land united nearly all of Earth's landmass into a single entity, creating a unique landscape that is difficult to imagine in the modern world. Pangaea was surrounded by a vast ocean known as Panthalassa, which occupied almost the entire remaining volume of the planet. This ocean was not just a body of water, but a complex ecosystem where various species interacted, laying the foundation for future marine life. The existence of Pangaea led to significant changes in Earth's climate. On this supercontinent, there were vast internal regions where temperatures could reach extreme values, both hot and cold, creating highly diverse climatic zones. This impact on the climate also influenced ocean currents, which in turn determined the distribution of heat across the planet and formed conditions for life. In such conditions, remarkable evolutionary changes took place. Internal regions of Pangaea, far from oceanic influence, became places where new ecosystems formed, such as forests that were home to various forms of life, including primitive reptiles and amphibians. These reptiles, such as Dimetrodon, could reach 6 meters in length and were among the first large terrestrial predators capable of hunting other animals. This was also the time when the first mammals began to develop, evolving in response to changes in their environment. The existence of Pangaea created conditions that were very different from today's, as there were no such climatic boundaries, allowing various species to freely migrate. The breakup of Pangaea led to the formation of new continents and, consequently, the isolation of many species, which resulted in further evolution and biodiversity. As the continents began to move and separate from each other, climatic conditions changed, leading to the formation of new ecosystems and the extinction of many species. This was an era when life on Earth underwent critical changes that ultimately shaped the biosphere we know today. As a result of evolution, some species adapted to new conditions, giving rise to modern ecosystems. The period of Pangaea was also important for the formation of geological structures such as mountain ranges and basins, which we can observe today and continue to influence the climate and ecosystems of the planet. For example, during this period, processes occurred that led to the formation of the Appalachians and other mountain systems. Pangaea was not just a supercontinent, it played a crucial role in shaping the biosphere of Earth, determining its future for millions of years to come. The central regions of Pangaea were characterized by an extremely continental climate, where summer temperatures could reach 35 degrees Celsius and winter temperatures could drop to -20. These conditions gave rise to vast deserts and semi-deserts stretching over thousands of kilometers. For instance, in the area now known as Tibet, there was one such desert where annual rainfall was less than 300 millimeters. Further south, in regions that are now part of Africa, there were large salt flats and sand dunes reaching heights of over 100 meters. Rare oases in these boundless expanses served as life sources for flora and fauna. Surrounded by lush vegetation around small lakes and rivers, these oases could support diverse ecosystems. It is worth noting that plants adapted to such conditions had deep roots, allowing them to reach groundwater, while animals developed various strategies for survival in heat and drought. For example, ancient reptiles living in these areas might have been similar to modern lizards that actively sought shade during the hottest hours of the day. Among these ecosystems, there were also large mammals, such as primitive dinosaur representatives, which adapted to extreme conditions by developing thick skin and special thermoregulation mechanisms. The complex ecosystems of these internal territories were subject to climate change, leading to the extinction of some species and the emergence of new ones that were more resilient to arid conditions. During periods when the climate became particularly harsh, flora and fauna were forced to migrate in search of more favorable conditions. Adaptive mechanisms, such as those of cacti that stored water or animals that could retain moisture in their bodies, allowed some species to survive in conditions that seemed impossible for life. These internal regions of Pangaea, far from the oceans, were true tests for life, requiring organisms to have incredible flexibility and endurance. Each year, massive droughts could occur here, causing sharp fluctuations in population numbers. Numerous fossils found in these areas testify to the fact that life here was diverse but also fragile, constantly adjusting to changing conditions. Despite the complex climatic conditions, it was precisely here that new species emerged, capable of surviving in conditions that today seem extremely hostile. Pangaea broke apart approximately 180 million years ago, and this process was one of the most significant events in Earth's history. Under the influence of tectonic forces, continents began to slowly split apart, forming cracks in the crust. These cracks gradually widened, creating narrow sea straits that eventually evolved into full-fledged oceans. For instance, the Atlantic Ocean began to form when North America and South America separated from Europe and Africa. This process did not occur instantaneously. The plates moved at a speed of only a few centimeters per year, but over millions of years, this led to the creation of new marine and oceanic spaces. As a result of Pangaea's breakup, oceans such as the Indian and Southern Oceans emerged, altering the configuration of ocean currents. The global ocean became more complex, leading to changes in the planet's climate. For example, the formation of new oceans changed the direction of currents, which in turn affected the distribution of heat and moisture. This created new ecosystems where species began to evolve separately, as seen in Australia, where animals developed in isolation from other continents. The breakup of Pangaea also contributed to the formation of new mountain systems, such as the Himalayas, which arose from the collision of the Indian and Eurasian plates. This geological process not only altered landscapes, but also created new opportunities for the diversification of life. For example, the existence of new oceans and their temperature gradients led to the emergence of various biomes, such as tropical reefs and cold ocean depths. The evolution of marine organisms like corals and fish was significantly accelerated by the new living conditions. As a result of this grand process, numerous new species appeared on Earth, adapted to various climatic conditions and ecosystems. Over millions of years, as continents continued to move, changes occurred that shaped the modern appearance of our planet. Currently, we can observe how tectonic processes continue to influence our lives, creating new mountains and oceans, forming climates and ecosystems that we know today. It is worth noting that the size of oceans now constitutes approximately 71% of the surface of our planet, underscoring their significance in geological and biological evolution. The Jurassic period, which lasted from 205 to 200 million years ago, was an evolutionary peak for dinosaurs, when they dominated the Earth's terrestrial vertebrates. This period can be characterized as an era of remarkable ecosystem diversity, where dinosaurs of various sizes and shapes filled numerous ecological niches. Wet forests, teeming with giant horsetails and ferns, provided ideal living conditions for numerous species. These forests were likely filled with sounds, from the rustling of insect wings to the loud roars of herbivorous dinosaurs, like Brachiosaurus, which could reach heights of 23 meters and lengths exceeding 25 meters. Open plains covered with cycads and ginkgos also played their role, providing food for both large and small animals. Herds of sauropods, which could weigh up to 100 tons, roamed these expanses, making them some of the largest animals to ever exist on Earth. Coastal swamps and lagoons represented another type of ecosystem, where crocodile-like reptiles and various marine dinosaurs, such as plesiosaurs with long necks and fins, lived. These plesiosaurs could catch fish in shallow waters. It is also important to note the existence of tiny mammals, such as Triassic mammals, which hid in the undergrowth to avoid predators like Tyrannosaurus rex, which could grow up to 12 meters long and had powerful jaws capable of tearing flesh. Approximately 150 species of dinosaurs inhabited the territories of modern-day North America and Europe, including both herbivores and carnivores. For example, Diplodocus, reaching lengths of up to 25 meters, would feed on tall ferns, while Allosaurus, around 8 meters long, would hunt smaller dinosaurs. Many of these species lived in ecosystems that were vastly different from one another, from tall trees to low shrubs, creating complex food chains and interconnections between various forms of life. Thus, the Jurassic period was not only a time of dinosaur dominance, but also a crucial stage in the evolution of ecosystems that continued to develop and become more complex. An important fact: during the Jurassic period, one of the largest mass extinctions occurred, when about 7 out of 10 animal species disappeared, leading to new evolutionary paths for the remaining groups. Archaeopteryx is a remarkable creature that played a pivotal role in understanding the evolution between reptiles and birds. It lived around 150 million years ago during the Jurassic period and was roughly the size of a sparrow. Yet its appearance combined features characteristic of two distinct groups of animals. Archaeopteryx had teeth, reminiscent of its reptilian heritage. Its long bony tail and claws on its wings gave it a predatory appearance. However, it also possessed feathers and wings, indicating its affiliation with the class of birds. This unique combination of traits made Archaeopteryx one of the earliest known transitional species, demonstrating how one group of animals could gradually transform into another. Its discoveries, first unearthed in the 19th century in Germany, confirmed Charles Darwin's theory of evolution. Notably, in 1859, paleontologist Georg Heinrich von Quenstedt found the first Archaeopteryx specimen, which exhibited significant features of both birds and reptiles. It served as a bridge between these two worlds, illustrating the gradual changes that occurred during evolution. Archaeopteryx's lifestyle was likely quite active. It could glide from tree to tree in the dense forests of the Jurassic period, using its strong wings for short flights. Open spaces filled with vegetation and insects offered it numerous opportunities for hunting. Scientists suggest that Archaeopteryx may have hunted small animals, using its sharp claws and teeth to capture prey. Its limited flight capabilities gave it an advantage over land-based predators, allowing it to effectively avoid danger. Thus, Archaeopteryx became an important component of the Jurassic ecosystem, representing not only a unique form of life, but also a crucial key to understanding the evolutionary process. Archaeopteryx's discoveries provided powerful evidence for the theory of natural selection, as they showed how changes in anatomy and behavior could lead to the emergence of new species. Notably, Archaeopteryx is one of the oldest known fossil birds, continuing to influence contemporary research on evolution. The Mesozoic era, specifically the Cretaceous period, which is considered the final stage of the Mesozoic era, was an era of significant changes on Earth. It saw substantial evolutionary innovations and radical transformations in ecosystems. Continents continued to drift apart, creating new marine and terrestrial spaces that gave rise to diverse biomes and ecosystems. Sea levels reached record highs, resulting in the formation of vast shallow seas that covered a significant portion of the continents. These inland seas served as incubators for new groups of organisms that came to dominate the planet. During this time, there was a flourishing of flowering plants, which spread rapidly, altering landscapes and providing new food sources for various animals. The emergence of new life forms, such as modern mammals and birds, indicated that Earth's ecosystems were undergoing critical transformations. It is important to note that during this period, there were also dramatic climate changes, from tropical to more temperate, which led to the extinction of some species and the adaptation of others. The evolution of mammals and birds was just one of many branches that began to flourish actively. However, the Cretaceous period ended with one of the most famous mass extinctions in Earth's history, when approximately 75% of all species on the planet disappeared, including dinosaurs. This extinction was likely caused by a combination of factors, including the impact of an asteroid and volcanic activity, which led to rapid climate change and ecosystem disruption. The Cretaceous period concluded the Mesozoic era, leaving behind not only a rich legacy of fossils, but also many questions about the evolution and survival of species in the face of rapid environmental changes. The Cretaceous Sea, during the Cretaceous period, which lasted from 125 to 60 million years ago, covered extensive territories of modern continents, including North America, Europe, and parts of Asia. These vast, shallow marine basins formed due to the rise of sea levels, which reached their maximum values, flooding low-lying land areas and creating extensive coastal ecosystems. At this time, the seas were warm and shallow, fostering the proliferation of diverse forms of life. Ammonites and belemnites, two types of mollusks, dominated these waters, leaving behind abundant fossil remains that continue to fascinate paleontologists. Ammonites, with their spiral shells, were not only diverse but also played a crucial role in the marine ecosystem, serving as food for large marine reptiles such as plesiosaurs and ichthyosaurs. These reptiles, reaching lengths of up to 12 meters, could freely navigate the warm waters, hunting fish and other marine creatures. Among them were primitive bony fish, such as cartilaginous fish, which began to develop their characteristic features, including various shapes and sizes. The seafloor at this time was covered with white chalky silt, formed from the skeletons of microscopic organisms like Foraminifera and Coccolithophores. These tiny creatures, living in the upper layers of water after their death, settled on the seafloor and over time formed rich chalk deposits, which later became known as chalk, giving the name to the entire Cretaceous period. The composition of these deposits was so unique that in places like Kensington in England, layers of chalk can reach heights of 80 meters. These deposits serve as important evidence of the climatic conditions and ecosystems of the Cretaceous period, with the calcium carbonate content in them indicating high levels of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Additionally, the Cretaceous Sea became the site for the formation of enormous reefs, which attracted numerous marine organisms, creating complex ecological interactions. Even underwater forests existed, where primitive plants such as algae grew, also contributing to the development of biodiversity. The Cretaceous Sea, with its richness of life and complexity of ecosystems, became one of the key stages in the history of Earth, leaving behind a significant legacy in the form of fossils and geological formations that are still studied by scientists worldwide. Flowering plants began their triumphant march across the planet during the Cretaceous period, which lasted from around 130 million to 65 million years ago. This time was marked by a true botanical revolution, as vibrant flowers and fruits began to displace the previously dominant gymnosperms. The first flowering plants, such as araucarias and magnolias, appeared approximately 130 million years ago and formed the basis of a new type of ecosystem. They possessed a unique ability to reproduce effectively through symbiosis with pollinating insects, significantly increasing their chances of survival and spread. Around 100 million years ago, flowering plants began actively colonizing all continents, including North America, Europe, and Asia, thanks to diverse seed dispersal mechanisms that allowed them to adapt to various climatic conditions. For example, plane trees, figs, and other flowering trees quickly occupied new ecological niches, forming dense forests that became homes for numerous animals. These forests were more diverse and complex than their predecessors, which were mainly composed of conifers. The appearance of flowering plants changed the appearance of Cretaceous forests. They became brighter and more colorful, filled with flowers that attracted pollinators such as bees, butterflies, and beetles. Flowering plants provided not only food for insects, but also new food sources for mammals, which began to evolve alongside them. The interaction between flowering plants and pollinators led to the emergence of new forms of life and relationships in ecosystems. An important event was the appearance of the first fruits, which protected seeds and facilitated their spread. This resulted in significant changes in the structure of forests. The appearance of dense understory and multi-layered canopies created new conditions for the life of various animal species. Since flowering plants quickly adapted to various conditions, they became the main element of Cretaceous ecosystems, forming extensive forest masses that stretched from the tropics to temperate zones. Thus, flowering plants not only changed the appearance of the planet, but also created new ecological niches that led to further biodiversity. Scientific research shows that by the end of the Cretaceous period, flowering plants already constituted more than half of all terrestrial plants, highlighting their impact on the ecosystems of that time. On April 6, 65 years before our era, one of the most catastrophic events in Earth's history occurred: the impact of the Chicxulub asteroid. This celestial body, with a diameter of approximately 10 kilometers, struck the planet's surface on the territory of the modern Yucatan Peninsula, leaving a crater over 130 kilometers long. The shockwave was so powerful that it generated a blinding flash of light, momentarily blinding the entire area and vaporizing nearby materials. As a result of this collision, a giant tsunami was formed, with waves reaching up to 100 meters high, sweeping everything in its path and destroying coastal ecosystems. The impact also ejected billions of tons of dust and ash into the atmosphere, blocking sunlight for an extended period. The consequences of this event were devastating. Widespread wildfires created an atmosphere similar to a nuclear winter. The surface temperature dropped sharply, and acid rain formed due to reactions with the released gases, destroyed soils and water bodies. This led to a collapse of photosynthesis, triggering a chain reaction in food chains. As a result of this catastrophic event, approximately 75% of all life forms on the planet, including non-avian dinosaurs that had dominated Earth for millions of years, became extinct. The period known as the Cretaceous-Paleogene extinction event is one of the most significant catastrophes in the history of the biosphere, paving the way for the further evolution of mammals. Although the exact timing and mechanisms of this process are still actively researched, it is clear that the Chicxulub impact forever changed the face of Earth and its ecosystems. In the Chicxulub crater, which was discovered only in the 1990s, scientists have found evidence of this collision, such as unique minerals formed under extreme pressures and temperatures. The Cenozoic era, which began approximately 66 million years ago and continues to the present day, marks the time when Earth began to recover from the catastrophic extinction event that occurred at the boundary of the Mesozoic and Cenozoic eras. This period is not only known for the extinction of dinosaurs, but also for the opening of new opportunities for life, as ecological niches previously occupied by giant reptiles began to be filled by new, smaller groups of organisms. During this time, the planet's climate changed, facilitating the flourishing of diverse forms of life, including mammals, birds, insects, and flowering plants. For instance, in the early Cenozoic, continents began to take on their modern shapes, significantly altering climatic conditions and ecosystems. This era witnessed the emergence of mammals that rapidly evolved, adapting to various habitats. From small rodents to enormous elephants, this diversity was made possible by the wide range of coexisting ecosystems. Around the same time, starting from the Eocene, birds began to occupy new niches, developing unique adaptations such as long-distance migrations and various hunting strategies. Flowering plants, which had already appeared on Earth during the Mesozoic era, began to spread actively, forming dense forests, meadows, and savannas, creating ideal conditions for the survival of numerous animals. The Cenozoic era also saw a rapid development of insects, which adapted to new types of plants, forming the basis for complex food chains. The appearance of various groups of mammals, such as primates, became a significant milestone in evolution, and with the emergence of humans, the Cenozoic era entered a new phase of its development. It is important to note that the Cenozoic era is rightly called the Age of Mammals, but it is essential not to overlook the significant contribution of other groups of organisms to the ecosystems of our planet. For example, by the end of the Cenozoic era, approximately 2 million years ago, the Ice Ages began, which had a significant impact on the climate and inhabitants of Earth. As a result of these changes, mass migrations of species occurred, contributing to further adaptations and evolutionary changes. The Cenozoic era, with its diversity of life forms and dynamics of ecosystems, is a crucial stage in the history of Earth, symbolizing the recovery from one of the most massive extinctions in the planet's history. A significant aspect of this time was the emergence of new ecosystems, in which mammals and other groups of organisms began to actively interact, creating complex and multifaceted ecosystems. The flourishing of mammals in the Cenozoic era was not accidental. It was the result of long processes of evolution, adaptation, and climate change that continue to this day. This period encompasses a wide range of life forms, from mammals to flowering plants, which continue to shape the appearance of our planet and its ecosystems. Thus, the Cenozoic era is a time when life on Earth took on new, sometimes unexpected forms, and this diversity continues to amaze and fascinate scientists worldwide. The Paleocene is a period that began approximately 65 million years ago, following the mass extinction of dinosaurs, and lasted for about 10 million years. This time span served as a true second chance for mammals, which had previously been overshadowed by giant reptiles. Mammals, mostly in small and primitive forms, began actively occupying the ecological niches that had been freed up. During this time, unusual groups emerged, representing evolutionary experiments, many of which had no modern counterparts. For instance, pantodonts were large herbivorous mammals that could reach lengths of up to 2 meters. They had large, robust teeth that allowed them to eat tough vegetation, and their body shape resembled modern rhinos, although they were not the ancestors of the latter. Another interesting group were mesonychids, which became predators and may have hunted larger mammals. Their sizes varied from small to significantly large, reaching lengths of up to 1.5 meters. Mesonychids had sharp teeth and were well adapted to an active lifestyle. They also occupied specific ecological niches that became available after the disappearance of dinosaurs. Multituberculates, in turn, were another example of an evolutionary experiment from this time. These creatures had numerous bumps on their teeth, which allowed them to efficiently process plant food. However, despite their unique adaptations, many of these groups did not survive the harsh competitive struggle and soon disappeared. For example, pantodonts and mesonychids did not make it to the end of the Paleocene, giving way to more specialized forms that later became the basis for further diversification of mammals. During this time, other groups also began to develop, such as the primitive ancestors of modern whales and elephants, indicating that mammals indeed experienced adaptive radiation, which led to the formation of numerous new species. The Paleocene marked the beginning of a long path for mammals towards dominance on the planet, which continued through the Eocene and Oligocene. This period transformed the face of the Earth and became the foundation for future ecosystems. The first mammals that appeared in the Paleocene were diverse in form and ecological niches, launching a new chapter in the history of life on Earth. The formation of the Himalayas is a striking example of orogenesis during the Cenozoic era, which began approximately 30 million years ago. This monumental process was caused by the collision of the Indian tectonic plate with the Eurasian plate. The Indian plate, moving northward at a speed of about 5 centimeters per year, collided with Eurasia, leading to the compression and uplift of the Earth's crust. This collision was not instantaneous. It occurred over millions of years, resulting in the formation of the highest mountain range on the planet. The highest point of the Himalayas, Mount Everest, rises to a height of over 8 kilometers above sea level, making it not only a symbol of human ambition, but also an outstanding geological formation. The operations of compression and uplift of the mountain rocks occurred in several stages, with each wave of pressure resulting in the formation of new layers of rock, which can now be observed in various geological sections. This slow but inexorable collision changed not only the physical landscape, but also the global weather systems. The Himalayas became a barrier for monsoon winds, which in turn created unique climatic conditions in the region. On the southern slopes of the mountain range, tropical rainforests formed, while on the northern slopes, exposed to cold winds, Arctic conditions emerged, leading to the formation of completely different ecosystems. These changes in climate and ecology influenced the evolution of flora and fauna in the Asian continent. For example, on the slopes of the Himalayas, one can find unique plant species such as rhododendrons, which have adapted to harsh climatic conditions. Additionally, the mountains became home to numerous animals, including snow leopards and Himalayan bears, which evolved in response to specific living conditions. The formation of the Himalayas also had a significant impact on rivers such as the Indus and the Ganges, which began their journey to the sea, carving their way through mountain ranges. These rivers not only provide vital resources for millions of people, but also shape the landscape, creating fertile valleys. The process of Himalayan orogenesis continues to attract the attention of geologists and scientists who study how tectonic movements affect climate and life on Earth. With each million years, this process becomes more complex and diverse, contributing to the dynamics of our planet. The height of Mount Everest is 8,888 meters. The Paleocene thermal maximum was a period in Earth's history when the climate was extremely warm, and there were no ice caps at the poles. Imagine a world where subtropical vegetation stretched far north, ready to cover vast expanses now occupied by icy deserts. At that time, modern-day Greenland was home to deciduous forests, while the Arctic was inhabited by crocodiles, turtles, and other heat-loving creatures. Fossil finds indicate that these regions were not only home to tropical plants, but also heat-loving mammals, such as the ancestors of modern elephants and primates. This was an era of diverse and abundant ecosystems, which fostered the prosperity of many animal and plant groups. Notably, the level of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere was significantly higher than today, contributing to the greenhouse effect and retaining heat. Paleontologists like Dr. Mary Higgins have discovered the remains of several tree species that grew in conditions now impossible for survival. For example, in western Antarctica, fossilized remains of pines and eucalyptus have been found, indicating a mild climate. During this period, marine ecosystems were also thriving, with corals and mollusks flourishing and creating rich underwater landscapes. Scientists predict that this was one of the most significant periods of biological diversity on the planet, with the emergence of numerous new species. These climate and ecosystem changes led to unique adaptations in animals, such as increased size and altered behavior. For instance, the fossilized remains of large amphibians found in Europe and North America suggest that they could freely migrate across vast territories due to the mild climate. The Paleocene thermal maximum was a time of significant growth and evolution, when the planet was home to a multitude of life forms that could not survive in today's conditions. Scientific research shows that this period influenced the subsequent development of ecosystems and animals, laying the foundation for modern biological diversity. During this time, Earth also experienced numerous geological changes, such as the uplift of mountain ranges and changes in ocean currents, which in turn contributed to the formation of various climate zones. This is crucial for understanding how climate changes can impact life on the planet. In polar regions, where cold reigns today, forests once grew, and even in these conditions, heat-loving creatures thrived, demonstrating how dramatically the climate has changed over millions of years. This warm climate was the basis for the subsequent formation of modern ecosystems and climate conditions, as we know them today. Research indicates that this warm climate facilitated the development of diverse life forms, which may have become the ancestors of today's species. Eocene tropical forests of Antarctica, which existed around 45 million years ago, are a remarkable example of an ancient world where the southern polar continent was covered with green expanses of southern beaches, araucaria, and other trees. These forests not only created picturesque landscapes, but also served as homes for an incredibly diverse fauna. Paleontological research shows that these forests were inhabited by marsupial mammals, such as wild kangaroos and lemurs, as well as giant flightless birds resembling modern emus, reaching up to 3 meters in height. Among the insects, one could encounter enormous ants and butterflies, the size of which was comparable to a human hand. Reptiles, such as lizards and snakes, also found ideal living conditions here due to the warm climate, which maintained a constant temperature of around 20 degrees Celsius. These forests were not only lush but also dense, with tall trees whose canopies formed a thick green canopy, allowing only strips of sunlight to reach the moist earth covered in mosses and ferns. Bright flowers and fruits of these ancient plants attracted numerous animals, creating an ecosystem based on symbiosis. Unlike modern Antarctica, buried under a multi-kilometer layer of ice, this tropical paradise was teeming with life and diversity. Fossil studies conducted in the early 2000s showed that in some places, such as Seymour and Deception Islands, remnants of ancient trees dating back more than 100 million years, have been preserved. These findings became possible due to geological changes, resulting in the displacement of continental plates and a sharp change in climate. Plate tectonics led to the formation of mountain ranges and changes in ocean currents, which in turn contributed to the formation of glaciers and a rapid cooling. Thus, the world where lush tropical forests stretched to the horizon became a distant dream, lost under the icy cover. Fossils found in the Eocene layer indicate that even at heights of up to 2,000 meters above sea level, rare tree species that can now be found only in the tropics grew in those times. Such findings confirm that the climate conditions of that era were so mild that they allowed the existence of ecosystems that can now be found only on the equator. Moreover, some species, such as Araucaria, were ancestors of modern conifers, allowing us to trace the evolutionary line and the dynamics of changes in the plant world. As a result, the contrast between the green, life-filled continent and the current icy wasteland of Antarctica appears not only shocking, but also demonstrates how changeable the Earth's climate can be over millions of years. Studies conducted by scientists such as Dr. Emily Bennett from the University of Canterbury have confirmed that such changes in ecosystems occurred under the influence of natural factors such as solar activity and volcanism, further emphasizing the importance of understanding the climate history for assessing future changes. While contemporary scientists continue to study these ancient ecosystems, discovering new fossils in layers of rock covering millions of years, they are opening doors to a world that once flourished on what is now one of the harshest places on the planet. Existed mammals that began their evolutionary journey from terrestrial environments into aquatic ones, and this became one of the most remarkable examples of adaptation in the natural world. The first forms of cetaceans, known as pachycetids, appeared around 55 million years ago. These animals possessed distinctive features reminiscent of wolves and hunted in the coastal waters of ancient seas that once covered parts of today's continents. Findings from places like Wyoming show that pachycetids had short legs and elongated bodies, allowing them to move effectively both on land and in water. Gradually, around 50 million years ago, ambulocetids emerged, which were more adapted to semi-aquatic life. These creatures, resembling crocodiles, had longer limbs and wider feet that helped them swim and hunt fish in shallow waters. Their remains, found in India and Pakistan, indicate that ambulocetids were true predators, capable of hunting both in water and on land. The next stage in this evolutionary process were protocetids, which were fully adapted to aquatic environments. Protocetids, living around 40 million years ago, exhibited significant changes such as the reduction of hind limbs and a body shape resembling modern whales. Their fossilized remains have been discovered in Egypt and the modern Sahara, allowing researchers to understand this transformation. The nostrils of these creatures began to migrate to the top of their heads, facilitating breathing when they surfaced. This process became a key moment in the evolution of cetaceans, as it facilitated their complete adaptation to marine life. As a result, around 30 million years ago, the first true whales, such as Basilosaurus, appeared. These creatures could reach lengths of up to 23 meters and were among the largest predators of their time. Fossil finds of Basilosaurus in Libya and other countries in North Africa demonstrated their enormous size and powerful jaws, enabling them to hunt large fish-like animals. Over millions of years, this evolution continued, and today's whales and dolphins, such as blue whales and bottlenose dolphins, have unique adaptations that allow them to thrive in the diverse conditions of oceans and seas. Their flippers, evolved from the limbs of their ancestors, are now perfectly adapted for swimming. Research shows that the length of some whales' flippers can reach up to 1.5 meters, while their bodies can grow to incredible sizes, as in the case of the blue whale, which can reach lengths of up to 33 meters and weigh over 100 tons. The evolution of cetaceans is not just a transition from land to water. It is a journey filled with extraordinary transformations and adaptations, evidence of which is preserved in fossils scattered across the globe. The Oligocene cooling period was a pivotal moment in Earth's history, following the Paleogene climatic optimum when temperatures reached their peak, fostering the growth of tropical and subtropical ecosystems. With the onset of the Oligocene cooling, which began around 34 million years ago, the world began to change. Tropical forests began to contract, giving way to more cold-tolerant biomes such as deciduous and coniferous forests. This cooling was a crucial step in the evolution of Earth's modern climate regime, which we observe today. Changes in climate and temperature led to significant evolutionary shifts in flora and fauna. Many plant groups, such as conifers, began to dominate large areas, displacing more heat-loving species. Animals, including mammals and birds, also faced pressure from the changing environment, driving them to adapt to new conditions and promoting the evolution of new species. For instance, mammals began to develop thicker fur and alter their feeding habits to survive in environments where resources became more scarce. The Oligocene cooling period also coincided with the expansion of ice sheets in Antarctica, further contributing to the global temperature drop and sea level changes. These changes gave rise to new ecosystems, such as tundra, which previously had little chance of existence due to the warmer climate. The complex interactions between climate and biological communities during this period laid the foundation for future evolutionary changes. Numerous fossil finds testify to the existence of species that adapted to these changes, such as early ancestors of modern bears and deer. As a result of the Oligocene cooling, the diversity of ecosystems increased, but many species that could not adapt to the new conditions went extinct. The changes that occurred during this period significantly shaped the appearance of Earth for millions of years, creating conditions for the formation of modern biomes and ecosystems. Ultimately, the Oligocene cooling was a significant milestone in Earth's history, influencing the evolutionary trajectories of many plant and animal groups, as evidenced by fossils from this period. In the Miocene epoch, which lasted from 23 to 15 million years ago, there was a significant shift from forest ecosystems to grasslands, a result of global cooling and climate change. On vast territories where dense forests once stood, grasses began to spread rapidly, creating new biomes such as savannas, steppes, and prairies. These open landscapes not only transformed the appearance of Earth, but also opened up new evolutionary opportunities for animals. For example, among herbivores like antelopes and horses, the ability to run quickly developed, allowing them to avoid predators in open spaces. Concurrently, the teeth of herbivores adapted to tough vegetation, developing stronger and flatter teeth that could efficiently process coarse grass. This period was a challenge for predators, who had to change their hunting strategies, adopting more active pursuit methods. The shift in ecosystems also led to the development of various defensive mechanisms against predators. Many herbivores began to form herds, which provided better protection against attacks. A key aspect of this transition was the intensification of seasonal climate, which made grassland ecosystems less dependent on constant moisture and allowed them to adapt to periods of drought and flooding. As a result, the Miocene became a time when grasses not only displaced forests, but also shaped a landscape where survival depended on speed, adaptability, and social structure of animals. Research shows that during this period, there were sharp changes in the composition of fauna, such as an increase in the number of species capable of rapid movement and survival in open spaces, including groups related to modern horses and giraffes. These changes in ecosystems and adaptations of animals laid the foundation for the formation of new food chains and interactions in nature. Miocenic ancestors of humans, such as Proconsul, Dryopithecus, and Ramapithecus, inhabited forests in Africa and Eurasia around 23 to 5 million years ago. Proconsul, for example, lived in eastern Africa, and its remains were discovered in places like Uganda and Kenya. These creatures combined features of modern apes and early hominids. Proconsul had a larger brain compared to its ancestors, indicating the development of cognitive abilities. It moved through trees using both hands and feet, which suggests the presence of an upright posture characteristic of future human-like creatures. Dryopithecus, which inhabited forests in Europe and Asia, also had its unique features. Its remains were found in places like Greece and Spain, and they had longer limbs, allowing them to effectively move through tree branches. These creatures were omnivorous, meaning their diet consisted of fruits, leaves, and insects, enabling them to adapt to various environmental conditions. Ramapithecus, living in southern Asia, also played a significant role in evolution. Its remains were found in India and Pakistan, and it likely developed some of the first skills necessary for tool use. It was during the Miocene that the evolutionary lines diverged, leading to modern human-like apes and humans, as evidenced by findings dating back around 7 million years ago. At this time, tropical forests covered a significantly larger area than they do today, providing ideal conditions for the life and development of these primates. The Miocene ancestors of humans laid the foundation for further evolution, leading to the emergence of Homo habilis and then Homo erectus. Examples of such adaptations can be observed at the bone level, showing changes in structure that allowed better interaction with the environment and ultimately led to more complex social behavior. Research results indicate that it was during this period that important skills, such as tool use, developed, which is fundamental to the formation of human culture and society. The Pliocene is a period of the late Cenozoic era, characterized by significant changes in climate and geography of the Earth, which led to the formation of the modern face of our world. During this time, continents occupied their current positions, contributing to the creation of modern biomes. Continents such as North America and Eurasia were located in almost the same coordinates as they are now, allowing animals and plants to adapt to new conditions. The Pliocene was an era when the climate became increasingly diverse, transitioning from the warm Miocene to the cold Pleistocene. Scientists note that during this time there were significant temperature fluctuations, leading to the formation of various ecosystems such as savannas, forests, and steppes. For example, in North America, vast grasslands formed, while in the tropics, dense forests persisted. This was also a time when many groups of animals and plants began to take on recognizable forms. During this period, there was a proliferation of herbaceous plants, which facilitated the appearance of herbivorous animals such as the ancestors of modern horses and bison. The Pliocene was a crucial transitional stage that prepared the biosphere for the approaching Ice Age, when the climate became significantly colder and the living conditions for many species changed. In a study conducted in 2012, scientists found that during this time there was intense development of mammals, such as the ancestors of modern elephants and rhinos, which began to migrate between continents. This led to more intimate ecosystem interactions and competition for resources. An important aspect of the Pliocene was also the change in sea level, caused by climate fluctuations, which affected coastal ecosystems and the habitats of many marine species. Scientific research shows that changes in carbon dioxide levels during this period had a significant impact on the global climate, contributing to cooler conditions that preceded the ice ages. The Pliocene laid the foundation for the formation of future ecosystems and the evolution of animals that later dominated in the Pleistocene. As a result, this period was a key stage in the evolution of the biosphere, during which changes occurred that determined the appearance of life on Earth in the future. During this time, ecosystems such as mangrove forests also actively developed, providing habitats for numerous marine and terrestrial species. Scientists note that these changes were harbingers of future climate changes that significantly influenced the distribution of species and ecosystem interactions. The Messinian salinity crisis, which occurred around 5 million years ago, was one of the most dramatic events in the history of the Mediterranean Sea. This event occurred when the Mediterranean Sea was cut off from the Atlantic Ocean, causing a rapid drop in water levels. As a result, massive salt deposits formed on the former seabed, reaching heights of several hundred meters in some areas. During this period, which lasted for several million years, ancient rivers such as the Po and the Rhone began to carve deep canyons into the exposed seabed, creating impressive geological formations. Deep and narrow gorges formed as a result of these processes, becoming natural museums that provide access to evidence of climate and ecosystem changes in this region. In the deepest parts of the basin, salt lakes formed, which served as temporary ecosystems, attracting various animals and plants adapted to extreme conditions. These lakes were important sources of salt for local ecosystems and attracted migrating animals, creating a temporary land bridge between Africa and Eurasia. Research shows that this event significantly affected the region's climate, causing sharp changes in temperature and rainfall. The Messinian salinity crisis led to the mass extinction of many marine species that could not adapt to the new conditions. Meanwhile, some terrestrial species, such as the ancestors of modern mammals, were able to use migration corridors, which facilitated their spread to new territories. Thus, the Messinian salinity crisis was not only a geological but also a biological catastrophe, permanently altering the region's appearance. The processes that followed resulted in the formation of vast desert landscapes, which over time led to the formation of the present-day Mediterranean Sea. Around 5 million years ago, after the connection with the Atlantic was restored, it was filled. During this period, sea levels rose, and the salt deposits left on the seabed became the basis for future salt mines, which are still actively exploited in countries such as Spain and Italy. In the late Miocene and Pliocene epochs, approximately 7 to 3 million years ago, volcanic activity at the boundary of tectonic plates created the Isthmus of Panama, which became a decisive factor in shaping the modern climate of Earth. This narrow land bridge, stretching about 500 kilometers between North and South America, radically altered ocean currents, dividing the single ocean into the Atlantic and Pacific. Volcanic activity in this region not only raised land above sea level, but also formed numerous mountain ranges, such as the Cordilleras and Transversal Corridor. This geographical transformation created a barrier that changed the familiar flow of water, and consequently the climate conditions on the planet. With the formation of the Isthmus of Panama, the direction of ocean currents began to change, particularly affecting the Gulf Stream, which became more powerful and active. This warm ocean current, starting in the Gulf of Mexico, could now freely flow northward, warming the waters of the Atlantic and significantly influencing the climate of countries along its path. For example, countries in Western Europe, such as the United Kingdom and Norway, began to receive more heat than they would have if the Gulf Stream had continued to flow in its original course. These changes in ocean currents had a serious impact on the global climate, contributing to cooling in the Northern Hemisphere. As a result of the redistribution of heat on the planet, a process began that ultimately led to the onset of the Ice Age. Approximately 2 million years ago, during a period when glaciers began to actively expand, the temperature on Earth decreased, which contributed to the formation of ice sheets in North America and Eurasia. These glaciers, stretching for thousands of kilometers, changed not only the landscape, but also the ecosystems and the sea level, which fell by several dozen meters. The change in ocean currents also led to a new distribution of rainfall worldwide. In some regions, such as the Sahara, this caused drought and the transformation of green savannas into deserts, while in other places, such as the northeastern part of South America, the amount of rainfall increased, influencing the development of tropical forests. Thus, the Isthmus of Panama became not just a geographical feature, but also a catalyst for global climate changes that affected the entire ecosystem of Earth. This narrow bridge between two continents not only connected them, but also divided the ocean, changing the climate for thousands of years. Since then, climate conditions on the planet have continued to change, and these changes continue to affect ecosystems and climatic zones. The Great American Interchange was a monumental biogeographical event that occurred around 3 million years ago, when the formation of the Isthmus of Panama created a corridor for the migration of animals between North and South America. This narrow passage, formed by tectonic processes, served as a bridge that connected two continents that had long developed independently, resulting in significant changes in the ecosystems of both regions. From this point on, the faunas of the two continents began to meet and intermingle, creating a unique picture of migration where animals that had never seen each other before began to cross this new path. Imagine large mammals, reptiles, and birds crossing this bridge, striving to occupy new ecological niches. This exchange was not one-sided. On the north, species evolved in colder climates were encountered, while on the south, tropical and subtropical species accustomed to warmth were found. As animals adapted to new conditions, some species became dominant, while others, unable to compete, disappeared. For example, large northern predators like jaguars began to interact and compete with local South American species, leading to significant changes in food chains. This event also resulted in the emergence of new ecosystems where elements from both continents mixed, creating unique biotopes and conditions for survival. One of the most striking examples of this exchange is the appearance of new species that adapted to the mixed environment, which in turn influenced the flora and fauna of both Americas. This exchange opened paths not only for animals, but also for plants, which began to migrate as well, further complicating ecosystem interactions. As a result, the ecosystems of North and South America became more diverse, but also more vulnerable to changes. The mixing of species led to the emergence of new ecological interactions, which reflected in the biological diversity. However, not all species could adapt to the new conditions, and this is where the story of winners and losers begins. Some species became dominant in the new conditions, while others found themselves on the brink of extinction. Thus, the Great American Interchange became a crucial stage in the history of evolution, forever changing the appearance of the fauna of both continents. This event demonstrated how geographical changes can fundamentally influence biological diversity. During this exchange, many species survived and adapted, but many others disappeared, unable to withstand the competition. The effects of this exchange are still felt today, and researchers continue to study the consequences of this biogeographical event, which served as a catalyst for further changes in the ecosystems of both Americas. The Pleistocene Ice Age spanned a period of time from approximately 2 million to 10,000 years ago, marked by significant climate changes when vast ice sheets up to several kilometers thick covered the northern regions of the planet. These glaciers extended for thousands of kilometers, reshaping the landscape of North America, Europe, and northern Asia. For instance, the North American ice sheet reached its maximum around 22,000 years ago, covering almost all of Canada and parts of the northern states of the United States. Glaciers exerted a powerful influence on the landscape, creating deep lakes such as Lake Michigan and Lake Superior, as well as fjords along the coasts of Norway and Scotland. These ice masses moved at speeds of up to several centimeters per day, carving valleys and forming moraines that are now characteristic features of the landscapes in places like Greenland and Alaska. Periodic advances and retreats of glaciers, driven by temperature fluctuations, altered the appearance of entire continents, leaving behind traces that researchers continue to study. Sea level also varied depending on the volume of water held by glaciers. During glacial maxima, sea level dropped by more than 100 meters, creating land bridges such as the Bering Land Bridge, which connected Asia and North America. These migration paths allowed animals like mammoths and saber-toothed tigers, as well as early humans, to traverse vast distances in search of new territories. Groups of hunter-gatherers who crossed this bridge likely became the ancestors of the indigenous peoples of America. When glaciers began to retreat around 10,000 years ago, sea level rose again, flooding these migration routes and creating new ecosystems. This led to the extinction of many large mammals that could not adapt to the new conditions. Scientific research indicates that the climate changes at the end of the Pleistocene served as a catalyst for the formation of modern ecosystems and human migration, leaving a profound impact on human history. The study of animal remains and artifacts found in layers formed by glaciers helps us reconstruct the picture of this extraordinary time. The megafauna of the Pleistocene epoch included a multitude of extraordinary giant animals that inhabited all continents over a period of approximately 2 million years to 10,000 years ago. Mammoths, likely the most famous representatives of this era, reached heights of up to 14 feet and weighed around 6 tons. Their shaggy fur helped them survive in the harsh conditions of cold climates. Mammoths had long, curved tusks that they used as tools to dig through snow in search of food and as weapons to defend against predators. Mastodons, close relatives of mammoths, had a more robust build and shorter tusks. Their teeth were adapted for eating tougher vegetation, allowing them to live in forested areas. Hairy rhinos with their thick fur and massive bodies were another symbol of the Pleistocene era. These animals weighed up to 4 tons and had 2 tusks that they used in territorial fights and for courting females. They inhabited open plains and tundras, where their powerful legs allowed them to move across snow-covered terrain. Giant sloths, such as the Megatherium, weighed up to 1 ton and were up to 6 meters long. Their enormous claws were used for gathering food from trees and for defense against predators. Saber-toothed cats, such as Smilodon, were among the most formidable predators of their time. With tusks up to 7 inches long, they hunted large herbivorous animals like mammoths and bison. Their powerful jaws and strong legs allowed them to quickly attack prey, using stealth and speed. Cave bears, which could reach heights of up to 3 meters, were omnivorous but primarily fed on meat and plant material. They used their massive claws for digging and searching for food, as well as for defending their dens, where they often found shelter from the cold. The social behavior of these animals was diverse. For example, mammoths often formed herds consisting of females and young individuals, which allowed them to protect themselves from predators and care for their offspring. Mastodons could lead a more solitary life but found mates for reproduction. Giant sloths were typically solitary but gathered in groups during the breeding season. Unfortunately, most of these magnificent creatures went extinct at the end of the Pleistocene, likely due to a combination of climate change and hunting by early humans. Climate change reduced their natural habitats, while human hunting accelerated their disappearance, leaving behind only fossils and legends. Scientific research shows that these factors played a crucial role in the extinction of megafauna, leaving the world without these remarkable animals that once dominated the planet. Studying the fossilized remains and traces of their lives helps us better understand how they adapted to their environment and what conditions allowed them to exist. The Pleistocene extinction of megafauna is one of the most dramatic events in Earth's history, when numerous large animals disappeared over a relatively short period, leaving behind only echoes of their former glory. This process spanned a period from approximately 130,000 to 10,000 years ago, which is just a blink of an eye in geological time. During this time, the planet was home to an incredible diversity of life forms, with megafauna consisting of giant land animals such as the woolly mammoth, giant sloth, and saber-toothed tiger dominating ecosystems. Each of these creatures occupied a unique niche in its environment, playing a crucial role in maintaining ecological balance. However, in the face of global climate change and habitat alterations, megafauna began to disappear from the face of the Earth, as if nature had decided to erase an entire page from the book of life. This extinction was not random but selective, primarily affecting large terrestrial mammals, while smaller species, birds, and marine creatures were less affected. For example, studies show that around 75% of large mammals weighing more than 40 kilograms went extinct in North America, while smaller mammals like mice and squirrels survived and adapted to the new conditions. This created a sad picture. A world once filled with magnificent creatures became less diverse and less impressive. Landscapes once inhabited by mammoths transformed into vast steppes where many species had no place. The disappearance of these animals not only altered ecosystems, but also left cultural traces in myths and legends that still live in folk memory. Research on fossil remains by scientists like Dr. Lee Stewart from the University of Florida shows that many of these extinct species were closely associated with humans, adding another layer of complexity to understanding this event. The Pleistocene extinction of megafauna was not only an ecological catastrophe, but also a significant moment in human history, when people began to realize their role in the ecosystems they inhabited. Estimates suggest that around 30 species of mammoths existed during the last ice ages, but by the end of the Pleistocene, their numbers had declined to isolated populations on remote islands like Wrangel Island. This island was the last refuge for mammoths, which went extinct only about 4,000 years ago. Scientists continue to study the causes of such a rapid decline in large fauna, with popular theories linking it to climate changes that led to the loss of familiar habitats, while others point to human hunting as a contributing factor to their extinction. This mystery of the Pleistocene extinction continues to captivate and divide scientists and historians, as each new piece of information helps build a more complete picture of how humanity interacted with the surrounding world and what consequences this interaction had for the planet. The hypothesis on the role of humans in the Pleistocene extinction highlights how primitive hunters, armed with spears and organized into groups, could systematically hunt large animals such as mammoths and woolly rhinos. These hunters employed collective hunting tactics, which allowed them to effectively deal with even the most dangerous predators. For instance, in the 20th century, archaeologists discovered in present-day America the remains of mammoths killed using stone tools left by humans. Studies indicate that hunters could hunt large animals using traps and fire to drive them into traps. The wave of extinction model demonstrates how the spread of humans across new territories, starting from Australia around 60,000 years ago, then through Eurasia and finally to America, led to a sharp decline in the population of megafauna. For example, in Australia, the extinction of large marsupials like the Megatherium occurred due to hunting and changes in ecosystems caused by human activity. In Eurasia, where primitive people hunted mammoths and saber-toothed tigers, changes in biomes due to hunting combined with climate change significantly impacted populations. When humans reached America around 15,000 years ago, they introduced new hunting methods and predators like dogs. which further increased pressure on large animal populations. These dogs likely aided humans in hunting, enhancing their attack efficiency and creating additional threats for slow-reproducing animals such as mammoths, which could give birth to only one offspring every few years. The combination of active hunting, habitat changes through the use of fire for land clearing, and the introduction of new predators led to many species being unable to adapt to rapidly changing conditions and becoming extinct. According to estimates by scientists, around 70% of large mammals in North America went extinct within the first 1,000 years after human arrival. These factors created ideal conditions for a mass extinction, where hunting and ecosystem changes driven by human activity had a disproportionately strong impact on large animal populations. Approximately 300,000 years ago in Africa, Homo sapiens, our direct ancestor, emerged, distinguished from other human species like Neanderthals and Denisovans by their unique abilities to adapt and innovate. These early humans possessed highly developed cognitive skills, enabling them to create tools and develop language. Over the following millennia, small groups of Homo sapiens began to leave their homeland, embarking on long migrations through deserts and mountain ranges. The first major migrations occurred around 140,000 years ago, when some of them crossed the Red Sea and moved into Asia. These groups encountered diverse climatic conditions, from tropical regions to cold steppes, and quickly adapted, changing their hunting and gathering methods. For example, in Europe, where they encountered Neanderthals, our ancestors not only hunted them, but also likely interbred, as evidenced by DNA analysis showing that some modern humans have Neanderthal genetics. The migration process continued, and around 60,000 years ago, Homo sapiens reached Australia, where they mastered unique ecosystems, using their skills to create new tools such as spears and fish traps. At this time, they also began to cross the Bering Strait, allowing them to enter North America, where they faced new challenges such as abrupt climate changes and the need to adapt to new types of game. Around 15,000 years ago, when sea levels dropped, these groups were able to move across land, settling the continent. It is important to note that due to their social skills, Homo sapiens could form groups, which ensured their success in hunting and gathering. They created complex social structures and exchanged knowledge, which contributed to their survival in diverse and often harsh conditions. These migrations and adaptations became possible thanks to their ability to cooperate and deeply understand their surroundings, allowing them to overcome distances of thousands of kilometers. Around 10,000 years ago, as the agricultural revolution began, Homo sapiens had already occupied almost all continents, from Africa to America, from Europe to Australia, demonstrating an incredible ability to survive and settle new territories. By this time, they had established themselves in various ecosystems, from Arctic to tropical, and adapted to each, utilizing available resources. This led to the creation of diverse cultures and civilizations that we can observe today. It is worth noting that Homo sapiens not only survived, but also became the dominant species on the planet, possessing a unique ability to innovate and cooperate. Over the course of thousands of years, they developed technologies such as agriculture and animal husbandry, which transformed their way of life and ensured sustainable existence. The Holocene is the current geological epoch that began at the end of the last ice age, when the climate on Earth became significantly warmer. During this period, glaciers that previously covered large areas began to retreat, opening up new lands and shaping the modern coastlines. This change in climate led to the establishment of stable climatic regimes that we observe today, including regions with temperate, tropical, and Arctic climates. The Holocene also saw the stabilization of sea levels, and many continents, such as Europe and Asia, acquired their current outlines. With the retreat of glaciers, fertile plains became accessible to humans, opening up new opportunities for the development of agriculture. As a result, humanity made a decisive transition from hunting and gathering to a settled lifestyle, which included the cultivation of plants and the domestication of animals. The emergence of agriculture not only increased food security, but also contributed to population growth, leading to the formation of the first cities and civilizations. In these new urban centers, people began to develop complex social structures, creating hierarchies of power, trade, and cultural exchanges. Thus, during the Holocene, humanity began to gradually increase its influence on natural ecosystems, leading to significant changes in the biosphere. The development of technologies, such as tools for efficient land cultivation, became the basis for further progress. For example, the first agricultural communities began to cultivate grains like wheat and barley, as well as legumes, which provided a diverse diet. Around 10,000 years ago, people began to build permanent settlements, which contributed to the accumulation of knowledge and cultural exchange. These settlements became centers of civilizations where art, science, and technology developed. As a result, the Holocene is not just a geological epoch, but also a period when humanity began to actively shape its environment and influence nature. With the transformation of the environment and climate, this time saw the formation of the first states, such as the Sumerians in Mesopotamia, who organized complex systems of governance and law. This was a period when people began to record their knowledge and history, creating the first written systems. The appearance of writing became a turning point, allowing the transmission of information and knowledge from generation to generation, significantly accelerating the development of civilizations. For example, the Sumerians created cuneiform writing, which became the basis for further development of writing in the Near East. As a result, the Holocene laid the foundation for all subsequent cultural and scientific achievements of humanity, shaping the world we know today. Scientific research shows that during this time, not only social but also technological development took place, including the creation of the first metal tools. The establishment of exchanges between different regions led to the spread of technologies and knowledge, contributing to the development of trade. Consequently, the Holocene was a significant stage in human history, during which the foundations for further development of science, art, and technology were laid. The Neolithic Revolution, which occurred approximately 10,000 years ago, was one of the most significant milestones in human history, fundamentally altering the way people lived. People began to cultivate plants and domesticate animals, marking a transition from a nomadic lifestyle of hunters and gatherers to settled communities. The first agricultural cultures emerged in the Near East, where people began to cultivate crops such as wheat and barley, and to raise animals like sheep and goats. During this period, known as the Neolithic, people started to form permanent settlements. Archaeological excavations at sites like Çatalhöyük in Turkey show that as early as 7,000 years before our era, thousands of people lived there, building houses of mud and wood that formed entire neighborhoods. In China, beginning around the 8th millennium BCE, rice and millet were actively cultivated, contributing to population growth and the development of settled communities. In Mesoamerica, starting around the 3rd millennium BCE, indigenous peoples began to cultivate maize, beans, and squash, which became the basis of their diet. These changes not only increased food availability, but also led to the complexity of social structures. The abundance of food allowed people to engage in activities beyond agriculture, such as crafts, which fostered trade. The establishment of permanent settlements led to the creation of the first cities, such as Ur and Uruk in Mesopotamia, where by the 4th millennium BCE, more than 20,000 people lived. These cities became centers of cultural and economic life, where religion, art, and science developed. The Neolithic Revolution also catalyzed social changes. Hierarchies, division of labor, and governance emerged, ultimately leading to the formation of the first civilizations. The transition to agriculture was a pivotal moment that not only changed people's relationship with nature, but also the structure of society as a whole. By the 4th millennium BCE, there was a significant increase in population, leading to the formation of the first states and empires, such as ancient Egypt and Sumer. The Holocene climatic optimum, which occurred approximately between 9,000 and 6,000 years ago, was a pivotal period in human history and climate change. During this time, global temperatures were several degrees higher than today, leading to significant changes in ecosystems worldwide. For instance, in North Africa, the Sahara, now known for its barren desert, was covered in green savannas and lakes. Research conducted by the International Association of Geoarchaeology shows that the region had numerous water bodies, such as Lake Chad, which was 3 times larger than its current size and served as a crucial point for animal and human migration. These conditions facilitated the development of agriculture among tribes that began cultivating crops like millet and barley, which in turn increased population numbers. Around 7,000 years ago, on the territory of modern-day Iran, archaeologists discovered settlements where people began actively practicing agriculture. as evidenced by the discovery of tools and seeds during excavations. In the north, in Europe, the climate became significantly milder, allowing the expansion of plant and animal habitats. For example, in Britain during this period, the vegetation included deciduous forests that provided abundant resources for early agricultural communities. This period also coincides with an increase in population in regions like Mesopotamia, where favorable climatic conditions led to the establishment of the first city-states, such as Ur and Uruk. Around 6,000 years ago, trade was already active in these cities, and the first records were made on clay tablets, which laid the foundation for future writing. Meanwhile, in the Arctic, where the climate became warmer, the population of animals like seals and walruses increased, providing additional food sources for local tribes. Evidence of these conditions has been found in the form of plant and animal remains preserved in glaciers and peat bogs. The development of agriculture and the growing population led to social changes, such as the formation of more complex social structures and hierarchies, which in turn resulted in the emergence of early civilizations. Around 5,000 years ago, the construction of the first pyramids began in the Nile Valley, symbolizing the power and grandeur of ancient Egypt, which arose as a result of the favorable climatic conditions that had existed earlier. This period, during which nature and climate created ideal conditions for life and societal development, became the foundation for many cultures and civilizations that left their mark on history. As a result, the Holocene climatic optimum not only facilitated the development of agriculture, but also served as a catalyst for cultural and social progress, leading to the creation of the first cities and states. Scientific research shows that during this time, the Earth's population increased to approximately 5 million people, which is several times more than in previous epochs. The Anthropocene is a proposed geological epoch in which human influence has become comparable to natural processes that shape our planet. This term emerged in the scientific community as researchers began to recognize that human activities, such as industrialization, agriculture, and urbanization, are significantly altering Earth's ecosystems. For the first time in the history of our planet, a conscious being, namely humans, has been able to affect the chemical composition of the atmosphere, influencing the levels of carbon dioxide, methane, and other greenhouse gases. For instance, since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution in the 18th century, the level of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere has increased from approximately 250 to more than 400 parts per million, leading to significant changes in climate conditions. In this context, it is worth noting that anthropogenic factors impact not only the atmosphere, but also the oceans, which are becoming more acidic due to the absorption of carbon dioxide. As a result, coral reefs like the Great Barrier Reef in Australia face the threat of extinction, as acidity destroys the calcium carbonate that forms them. Humanity is not just altering the atmosphere and oceans, but also moving vast quantities of rock, as seen in the extraction of mineral resources. For example, in China, more than 3 billion tons of coal are mined annually, leading to significant changes in landscapes and ecosystems. In some cases, such as the construction of dams or deforestation, human influence is so extensive that it affects global biogeochemical cycles, altering the distribution of water and nutrients in ecosystems. This phenomenon has led to mass extinctions of species, for example, due to the destruction of habitats. Studies show that since the beginning of the Anthropocene, the number of extinct species has exceeded 100 per year, which is several times higher than in previous epochs. Humans have not only become a part of the ecosystem, but also its main architect, creating new living conditions that are often incompatible with existing ecosystems. In this new reality, even natural phenomena like volcanic activity can be influenced by humans, for example, through earthquakes caused by oil and gas extraction. This period is distinguished not only by the fact that humanity is changing nature, but also by the fact that it is witnessing the consequences of its actions. The increase in the frequency and intensity of climate disasters, such as hurricanes, floods, and droughts, is linked to anthropogenic climate change. In some regions, such as the eastern coast of the United States or the south of Europe, the number of such disasters has increased several-fold over the past decades. These changes underscore that humanity is at a crossroads, where it must take responsibility for its actions and their consequences. In this context, the Anthropocene becomes not just a geological concept, but a reflection of a new stage in the history of Earth, where the influence of one species has become so extensive that it changes the very structure of the planet. The Industrial Revolution, which began in the late 18th century, fundamentally altered the relationship between humans and nature by initiating the mass use of fossil fuels. The 18th century marked an era when energy, accumulated by the sun over millions of years in coal, oil, and gas, began to be released at an unprecedented rate. 80 years later, in the 1830s, Britain was already building factories that utilized steam engines invented by James Watt, significantly increasing labor productivity. By this time, London had more than 500 factories producing textiles, metal, and other goods, which in turn led to a rapid growth of cities. One of the most notable achievements of this period was the construction of railways, which connected different regions of the country and allowed for the quick transportation of goods and people. The first full-fledged railway between Liverpool and Manchester opened in 1831 and transported more than 100,000 passengers in its first year of operation. This marked the beginning of a new era where the speed of movement and the volume of transportation grew exponentially. Steamships like the Clipper and the Savannah began to navigate the seas, making trade between continents more accessible and faster. By the mid-19th century, there were already more than 200,000 kilometers of railways in operation worldwide, which fundamentally changed the economic geography of countries. The increase in production and trade led to a rapid growth in population. By estimates, the urban population in Europe doubled from 1800 to 1900, reaching more than 100 million people. This growth came with consequences. Urbanization, which began at this time, led to the formation of giant cities like Manchester and Birmingham, which became centers of industry and trade. Massive factories built on former agricultural land required ever more resources, putting pressure on natural ecosystems. As a result, forests were cleared, rivers were polluted, and the air was filled with smoke from coal furnaces. By 1901, Britain was already consuming more than 100 million tons of coal per year, which became the primary source of energy for industry. This rapid growth in the consumption of fossil fuels had an impact not only on the environment, but also on the social structure of society, creating new classes such as the working class, which became the driving force behind industrialization. A system based on fossil fuels defined the economy and politics of many countries for centuries to come. For many people, this was a golden age of opportunities, but behind this euphoria lay a deep crisis, born of the depletion of natural resources and the deterioration of living conditions. By the end of the 19th century, scientists were already warning about the consequences of the uncontrolled use of fossil fuels, predicting environmental catastrophes and social conflicts. At this time, the first ideas about the need for sustainable development and environmental protection were emerging, but they remained on the periphery of public consciousness. Contemporary climate change, driven by human activity, has become one of the most serious threats to our planet. Global warming, occurring due to the release of greenhouse gases such as carbon dioxide and methane, is a direct consequence of the burning of fossil fuels, including coal, oil, and gas. In the 19th century, when the Industrial Revolution began, the level of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere was around 245 parts per million. By the year 2020, this figure had exceeded 450 parts per million, the highest level in the last 800,000 years, according to research conducted as part of the EPICA project. This increase in greenhouse gas concentrations has disrupted Earth's energy balance. More heat is trapped in the atmosphere, leading to an increase in surface temperature. Oceans, absorbing excess heat, begin to warm, causing them to expand and melt polar ice. For example, according to reports from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the average temperature of the oceans at depths from 0 to 2,000 meters has increased by more than 1.8 degrees Celsius since the year 2000. This melting of glaciers, in turn, leads to a rise in sea level, which, according to projections, could increase by 1 meter by the end of the century, threatening coastal cities such as Mumbai, New York, and Shanghai. Weather becomes increasingly unstable. There are more intense storms and hurricanes, such as Hurricane Harvey in 2017, which struck Texas and caused flooding that damaged more than 300,000 homes and left more than 30 people dead. Heat waves are becoming more frequent and prolonged, as seen in Europe in 2030, when temperatures in some regions exceeded 40 degrees Celsius. Droughts have become common in countries like South Sudan and Yemen, where millions of people face food shortages due to lack of rainfall. Changes in seasonal cycles, such as the timing of plant flowering and animal migration, also affect ecosystems and human communities. In the United States, according to research conducted by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, there has been a shift in the flowering periods by 2 weeks earlier, which could negatively impact bees and other pollinators. All these changes in climate conditions pose a threat not only to ecosystems, but also to social structures, leading to conflicts over resources, population migration, and many other problems that humanity still needs to solve. Massive extinction in the contemporary era is a process that occurs at an unprecedented speed, significantly exceeding the natural extinction rate, which is 1 to 5 species per million species per year. According to research conducted in the 2000s, today around 100 species are disappearing daily, which raises serious concerns among scientists and ecologists. This process is driven by numerous factors related to human activity: habitat destruction, environmental pollution, overexploitation of natural resources, introduction of invasive species, and climate change. For example, deforestation for agriculture and urban development leads to the destruction of natural habitats for many animal and plant species. As a result, according to reports from the World Wildlife Fund, the area of tropical forests is decreasing by 30 million hectares annually, which is equivalent to the loss of forest area larger than the territory of New Zealand. Water and air pollution also play a role. In the oceans, plastic waste is accumulating, with estimates suggesting more than 100 million tons, which threatens marine flora and fauna. Overfishing, for instance, leads to the depletion of populations, as many species cannot recover in time. Additionally, the introduction of invasive species, such as rats and cats, harms local ecosystems by displacing native species. Climate change, caused by greenhouse gas emissions, leads to temperature increases and changes in rainfall patterns, also affecting the living conditions of many organisms. Unlike past mass extinctions caused by natural disasters, such as asteroid impacts or volcanic activity, contemporary extinction is a consequence of the actions of one species: humans. This process has potentially catastrophic consequences for the biosphere, which is losing its diversity and resilience, threatening not only ecosystems but also the very existence of humanity. Estimates suggest that more than half of all species on the planet may be at risk of extinction in the coming decades if urgent and decisive actions are not taken to shift towards sustainable development. In such conditions, preserving biodiversity becomes not only an ecological but also an ethical challenge, requiring a global and comprehensive approach. According to a UN report on biodiversity, in the 21st century, we may lose up to 1/3 of all plant and animal species if we do not change our habits and methods of resource management. Coral reefs, often referred to as marine tropical forests, are among the most remarkable ecosystems on Earth, characterized by an incredible biological diversity that supports the lives of millions of marine organisms. However, due to climate change and ocean acidification, these ecosystems are on the brink of extinction. According to the World Wildlife Fund, more than half of the coral reefs on the planet have already been affected by human activities and climate changes, and by the end of the 21st century, they may disappear entirely if no significant measures are taken. The process of coral bleaching begins when the water temperature rises by just 1 or 2 degrees Celsius above normal values. As a result of this stress, corals expel symbiotic algae called zooxanthellae, which provide them with energy and give them their vibrant colors. Corals deprived of these algae turn white and lose their ability to feed, leading to their weakening and eventual death. Concurrently, as water temperatures rise, oceans absorb excess carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, leading to their acidification. According to the World Bank, the acidity of oceans has increased by 30% over the last 30 years, making it difficult for corals to form calcium carbonate skeletons necessary for their growth and strengthening. Each coral reef serves as a home to thousands of fish, mollusks, and other marine organisms, and the disappearance of these reefs means the loss of inhabitants that depend on them for survival. For example, the coral reefs of the Caribbean Sea support more than 7,000 marine species, including more than 200 species of fish, such as barracudas and reef sharks. The loss of reefs also impacts people who depend on fishing and tourism, as reefs attract tourists from around the world, contributing billions of dollars to the economies of countries. As a result, if current trends continue, by the year 2050, coral reefs may decline by 80%, putting at risk the existence of many marine ecosystems and leading to ecological consequences that could affect all levels of life on Earth. In recent decades, the deforestation of tropical forests has reached catastrophic proportions, leading to the destruction of some of the planet's most rich ecosystems. Each year, more than 10 million hectares of forest are cut down, an area equivalent to the size of Iceland. The main causes of this deforestation are the creation of agricultural lands, pastures for livestock, plantations for palm oil, and the extraction of minerals. For example, in Brazil, over the past 40 years, deforestation in the Amazon has led to the loss of more than 82 million hectares of forest, which is approximately 20% of the area of this unique region. Forests that once were home to millions of plant and animal species are now turning into monotonous fields where soy and corn are grown, or into pastures for livestock. This destruction has dramatic consequences for biodiversity. Studies show that around 30 species disappear each week, threatening not only the existence of unique animals like jaguars and orangutans, but also the ecosystem services these species provide. Deforestation also causes soil erosion, as the roots of trees that hold the soil in place are removed. Without vegetation, the soil becomes vulnerable to erosion, leading to a loss of fertility and deterioration of conditions for agriculture. The local climate also changes due to the destruction of forests. The disappearance of trees leads to an increase in temperature and a decrease in rainfall. This disrupts the natural water cycle, affecting agriculture and water supply for local communities. Tropical forests are often referred to as the lungs of the planet, due to their ability to absorb carbon dioxide and produce oxygen. The destruction of these forests exacerbates the problem of climate change, as the destruction of trees releases a massive amount of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Data show that the Amazon produces around 20% of the oxygen on Earth, and its destruction will have serious consequences not only for the local ecosystem, but for all of humanity. Each year, deforestation adds more than 2 billion tons of carbon dioxide to the atmosphere, intensifying global warming and disrupting climate stability. The destruction of tropical forests is not just an ecological catastrophe, it is a threat to the future of all life on the planet. Anthropogenic landscape refers to the territory created or significantly altered by humans, which now occupies an increasingly large portion of the Earth's surface. These landscapes are formed as a result of processes such as agriculture, urbanization, and infrastructure development. According to UN data, more than 70% of the world's population now lives in cities, leading to significant changes in natural ecosystems. Urbanization creates new living conditions where forests and fields are replaced by buildings, roads, and other structures. For instance, the area of built-up land has more than doubled since the beginning of the 20th century, and in some regions it has increased by 3 or more times. As a result, the fragmentation of natural ecosystems has become commonplace. Many species of animals and plants are losing their natural habitats, which negatively impacts their populations. For example, in European countries, rare species like the European tortoise are facing extinction due to the loss of their habitats. Each year, more than 12 million hectares of forest disappear worldwide, creating new ecological conditions where some species can adapt, while others are on the brink of extinction. Agriculture also contributes to landscape changes. Intensive use of fertilizers and pesticides leads to soil degradation and water body pollution. Data from the World Health Organization shows that more than 30% of the world's rivers are polluted due to agricultural runoff. These changes result in the emergence of new ecosystems that may be less resilient to climate change. For example, in cities where nature struggles against avenues and buildings, populations of species like the sparrow and pigeon increase, while more sensitive species disappear. In such conditions, the survival of species becomes a true struggle for survival, where some adapt to new conditions, while others become victims of human activity. The widespread use of land for agriculture leads to a decrease in the number of untouched territories, posing additional challenges for biodiversity. According to ecologists, more than 60% of all ecosystems on Earth have already been affected by anthropogenic influences, and this number continues to grow. These changes not only affect flora and fauna, but also the climate. Deforestation and landscape changes contribute to an increase in carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, exacerbating global warming. Scientific research shows that anthropogenic landscapes can cause changes in the microclimate, affecting rainfall levels and temperatures in regions. As a result, instead of being dynamic and diverse, many ecosystems become static and vulnerable, threatening their long-term sustainability. Urban ecosystems represent a new type of habitat where asphalt, concrete, and glass create unique ecological conditions, often referred to as heat islands. These heat islands are characterized by temperatures several degrees higher than the surrounding natural environment, due to the absorption of sunlight and the retention of heat in urban structures. According to a study conducted in 2020 by a group of scientists from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, the temperature in the city center can be 8 degrees Celsius higher than in the suburbs. This phenomenon also affects the hydrological regime. Rainwater, when it falls on asphalt and concrete, quickly drains into the storm sewers rather than infiltrating the soil, leading to an increased risk of flooding and changes in the composition of groundwater. Under these conditions, special soils rich in organic matter are formed, providing ideal conditions for the survival of certain plant species. Urban pigeons, sparrows, rats, foxes, and raccoons become common inhabitants of these artificial landscapes. For example, urban sparrows, which have adapted to living near humans, can now find food in discarded food scraps and actively nest on balconies and building roofs. Foxes, once wild animals, are increasingly found in cities, where they find shelter in parks and abandoned lots, while raccoons have adapted to a nocturnal lifestyle, exploring trash containers. Plants also find ways to survive in urban conditions. For instance, annual grasses and certain shrubs successfully colonize cracks in asphalt and abandoned lots, as seen with the common ragweed, which can grow even in the most unfavorable conditions. These species adapted to urban conditions represent an example of rapid evolution, where in a limited environment, the most resilient individuals are selected. Cities become, in a sense, laboratories of evolution, where organisms adapt to new conditions at an accelerated pace, as demonstrated by research conducted by the University of California in 2009, showing how quickly new species can occupy niches previously occupied only by natural inhabitants. Such changes not only highlight the flexibility and resilience of life, but also indicate that the interaction between humans and nature creates new ecological relationships, where each element, from the smallest seed to large mammals, finds its place in this new reality. As a result, cities become not only centers of human activity, but also arenas for the struggle for survival, where each new generation of organisms adapts to rapidly changing conditions. The movement for nature conservation began to actively develop in the 20th century, as people started to realize that the rapid development of industry and urbanization threatened natural ecosystems. In 1930, the first national park in the United States, Yellowstone, was established, becoming a symbol of the movement to preserve wild nature. Today, there are more than 7,000 protected territories worldwide, including national parks, reserves, and marine protected areas, which serve as sanctuaries for endangered species and ecosystems. For example, in Africa, a network of reserves such as Serengeti in Tanzania has been created, where active efforts are made to protect populations of wild animals, including lions and elephants. Successes in the restoration of degraded landscapes are also evident. In 2008, a program for the reintroduction of kea parrots, which had previously disappeared from the wild, began in New Zealand. These initiatives require significant resources and efforts, but they provide an opportunity to restore ecosystems that were once under threat. Ecological corridors, such as the California Forest Corridor in the United States, are being created to connect fragmented habitats and ensure the migration of species between these areas. Such corridors help preserve genetic diversity and facilitate the adaptation of species to changing environmental conditions. An important aspect of the nature conservation movement is also the work with local communities, which become active participants in environmental protection. In 2008, in Brazil, an initiative was launched to create local management bodies in Amazonian communities, which significantly reduce deforestation. These actions demonstrate that the preservation of nature is possible only through cooperation with those who live near wild nature. Protected territories not only protect rare species, but also contribute to tourism, creating new jobs and economic opportunities for local residents. For example, national parks in Kenya attract millions of tourists annually, generating significant income and contributing to the protection of the environment. Thus, the nature conservation movement represents an attempt by humanity to find a balance between development and the preservation of Earth's natural heritage. At the 2020 UN Biodiversity Conference in Kunming, China, a global strategy was adopted to protect 25% of all land and 25% of marine territories by 2030. This ambitious plan aims to protect ecosystems from further destruction and ensure a sustainable future for the planet. Sustainable development is a concept that posits that contemporary society must meet its needs without compromising the ability of future generations to do the same. This idea implies a harmonious coexistence between humans and nature, where resources are used wisely within their natural regenerative capacity. For instance, forests should not only be logged for timber, but also restored by planting new trees to avoid disrupting ecosystems and depleting resources. Notably, according to the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, more than 30% of the planet's land has already been degraded due to irrational farming practices and excessive livestock grazing. This underscores the importance of a sustainable approach in agriculture, where methods should not only increase yield but also restore soil. Sustainable development encompasses a balance between economic, social, and environmental aspects. An economy striving for growth must consider its impact on the environment and society, as short-term gains can lead to long-term losses. An example is the use of renewable energy sources such as solar and wind power, which, as practice shows, not only reduce CO2 emissions, but also create jobs in new economic sectors. According to the International Energy Agency, by 2030, renewable energy sources could account for 50% of the global energy mix if countries actively invest in this area, leading to more resilient economies, less dependent on fossil fuels. The social aspect of sustainable development implies equal access to resources and services for all segments of the population. It is crucial that each person has the opportunity to receive quality education, medical care, and access to clean water. Countries with high levels of inequality, such as Brazil, where the gap between the rich and the poor exceeds 20%, face serious social conflicts and problems that can hinder development. The environmental component includes the protection of biodiversity and the preservation of natural resources. Sustainable development requires that the amount of waste does not exceed nature's ability to process or dispose of it. For example, in Japan, a system has been developed where up to 90% of waste is recycled, significantly reducing the burden on landfills and promoting the reuse of materials. It is important to remember that sustainable development is not a static state, but a dynamic process that requires constant monitoring and adaptation to changing conditions. This includes not only government regulation, but also active participation from civil society and the private sector. Sustainable development should become part of corporate culture, where companies not only strive for profit, but also consider the impact of their activities on society and nature. By 2020, more than 30% of companies worldwide began to incorporate sustainable development principles into their strategies, indicating growing awareness of the importance of this concept. Therefore, sustainable development is not just a fashionable term, but a necessity that requires us to take a responsible approach to resources and the future of the planet. In this context, it is important to note that, according to the World Bank, by 2040, the Earth's population is expected to reach 9 billion, creating additional challenges for resource provision and ecosystems. The transition to renewable energy sources has become one of the most significant transformations in modern society. Solar panels, which have become an integral part of urban architecture, are installed on the roofs of homes worldwide. For instance, in 2020, Germany produced more than 30% of its electricity using solar panels, thanks to state support and growing public interest in ecology. Wind turbines, which were rare a decade ago, now stand on hills and even in open seas. As of 2020, the global installed capacity of wind power plants exceeded 600 gigawatts, equivalent to the energy needed to power more than 100 million homes. Geothermal power plants, which use the Earth's heat, have been actively developing in countries like Iceland, where nearly 90% of heating is provided by geothermal energy. These technologies not only reduce greenhouse gas emissions, but also help to decrease air and water pollution, which is often linked to traditional energy sources. For example, according to the International Energy Agency, the transition to renewable sources in 2009 avoided the release of more than 700 million tons of carbon dioxide. This transition not only contributes to environmental sustainability, but also opens new horizons for the economy. In 2018, the United States created more than 30,000 jobs in the solar energy sector, and this trend continues to gain popularity. The development of new technologies, such as advanced energy storage systems, allows for the effective use of resources without depleting the planet's reserves. For example, the use of lithium-ion batteries for storing solar energy has become the norm in most developed countries. These changes represent not just an evolution in the energy sector, but a revolution that changes our understanding of how we can meet our energy needs without harming ecosystems. The energy revolution based on wind, solar, water, and geothermal sources creates a sustainable foundation for the future, in which humanity can coexist with nature. In 2020, it was noted that more than 40% of the new installed capacity worldwide came from renewable sources, indicating a global shift towards sustainable energy. Restoration of ecosystems, or rewilding, involves active efforts to return degraded landscapes to their natural states and functions. This process often begins with abandoned agricultural lands that gradually transform into wild spaces where local plants begin to grow and ecosystems recover. For example, in 2015, the UK launched the Wilding Project, aimed at restoring over 1,000 hectares of land that once served as farmland. Reforestation efforts, such as those in Norway, where researchers from the Norwegian University of Science and Technology have reported a more than 8% increase in forest area over the past 20 years, due to initiatives to restore and protect forest areas from logging and degradation, are also crucial. Wetlands that were drained for agriculture, like in the Reed River project in Poland, are now being restored, leading to a more than 30% increase in biodiversity over 3 years. A key aspect of ecosystem restoration is the reintroduction of keystone species that can trigger cascading positive changes in ecosystems. Large herbivores like European bison and Przewalski's horses are returning to their historical ranges in Eastern Europe, helping to restore grasslands and maintain ecosystem health. Predators like wolves and lynx also play a role in managing herbivore populations, contributing to the balance of natural communities. Ecological engineers like beavers create water ecosystems by building dams, leading to the formation of new water bodies and increasing wetland habitats for numerous species. These projects not only increase biodiversity, but also help combat climate change by absorbing carbon. For instance, restored wetlands can absorb up to 12 tons of carbon per hectare per year. They also reduce the risk of floods and erosion by creating natural barriers and storing water in landscapes. Furthermore, ecosystem restoration opens up new opportunities for ecotourism, as seen in the California Delta Reserve, which attracts tourists interested in observing wild nature and local ecosystems. In 2020, over 30,000 tourists visited this reserve, bringing significant revenue to local communities. As climate change accelerates and biodiversity is lost, ecosystem restoration projects are becoming increasingly important, making them a vital component of sustainable development strategies. On planet Earth, there are numerous possible paths of development that depend on the decisions made by humanity today. Imagine a branching tree of opportunities. On one branch lie options leading to the restoration of biodiversity and sustainable coexistence between humans and nature. For instance, if we take measures to protect ecosystems, such as creating new nature reserves and restoring degraded lands, this could lead to an increase in species populations and the restoration of natural cycles. According to the World Wildlife Fund, in the year 2020, such initiatives resulted in a 20% increase in the populations of wild animals in some regions. On another branch of the tree are scenarios that lead to further degradation of ecosystems and climate destabilization. If humanity continues to ignore the consequences of its actions, such as excessive deforestation and ocean pollution, this will result in the extinction of many species and the destruction of natural habitats. For example, according to the United Nations, each year around 10 million hectares of forest are lost, equivalent to the size of Iceland. These factors create a vicious circle. A decrease in biodiversity weakens ecosystem services that support humanity, such as air and water purification, which in turn affects human health and well-being. Climate changes caused by human activity also pose numerous challenges, including an increase in the number of extreme weather events. For instance, according to the U.S. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, the number of hurricanes in the Atlantic Ocean has increased by 30% over the past 50 years. This means that the choice we make now is not predetermined, and we have the opportunity to change the course of our planet's development. We can choose a path that leads to a more sustainable future where humans and nature coexist in harmony, or continue on a path of destruction that will only exacerbate existing problems. Each of us, in our daily decisions, from choosing products and lifestyle to participating in public initiatives, contributes to this large tree of opportunities. Sustainable behavior, such as reducing plastic consumption or transitioning to renewable energy sources, can become an important step towards creating a healthy planet for future generations. Facts show that every action has significance and can be part of a broader movement for societal change. It is important to remember that our collective decisions in the coming decades will have long-term consequences for the future of Earth. Scientific research shows that the largest changes in atmospheric carbon levels are due to human activity, underscoring the need for a transition to more sustainable ways of living. For example, transitioning to organic farming can reduce carbon emissions by 30% compared to traditional methods. This shows that the future of Earth depends on us, and every choice matters. Through millions of years, Earth will continue its geological and evolutionary journey, indifferent to the fate of humanity. The drift of continents, which began millions of years ago, will intensify. In approximately 100 million years, Africa will collide with Europe, closing the Mediterranean Sea and forming a new mountain range comparable to the Alps. This collision will lead to the formation of new ecosystems and changes in climate, as this mountain formation will alter atmospheric flows and rainfall in the region. Australia will shift northward, causing changes in local flora and fauna. Species currently inhabiting this continent will have to adapt to new conditions or go extinct, giving way to new forms of life. The Atlantic Ocean will expand, while the Pacific Ocean will contract, affecting marine ecosystems and creating new islands as a result of volcanic activity. Increased volcanic activity in the Pacific region will lead to the formation of new archipelagos, where unique animals and plants adapted to specific conditions will appear. For example, in conditions of high volcanic activity, plants capable of surviving in mineral-rich soils may evolve, while animals will develop special mechanisms to protect against toxic substances. As a result of climate and habitat changes, ecosystems may emerge that have no analogues today, with new forms of life occupying ecological niches left by extinct groups. On land, new mammals may evolve into large herbivores, while their predators, such as giant reptiles or new mammalian species, will dominate these ecosystems. In the oceans, new predatory fish with unique adaptations for hunting in changing conditions may appear. Meanwhile, in the face of climate change, such as global warming, mass extinctions will occur, but this will not stop the process of evolution. The changes taking place on our planet are a continuous process that has been ongoing for all 4.5 billion years of its existence. Earth, as a living entity, will continue to develop, while humanity may remain only in the memory of the times when it dominated the planet, becoming just one of countless species that have come and gone in its history. Ultimately, in a few million years, Earth will become a completely different place, teeming with new forms of life that will adapt to the existing conditions, creating amazing ecosystems that we cannot even imagine today. Over millions of years, significant changes will occur in the composition of the atmosphere, leading to the emergence of new climate zones. For example, it is likely that in some regions currently deserts, dense forests will appear, while in other places where tropical forests currently grow, steppes may form. These changes will occur under the influence of long-term climate cycles and changes in solar activity. Throughout millions of years, Earth will maintain its diversity even if some forms of life disappear. In the end, this constant movement and change is the essence of our planet's existence. The Sun, our star, will eventually exhaust its hydrogen reserves in the core over the course of approximately 5 billion years. This process will not occur instantaneously, but at some point it will begin to slowly expand as it transforms into a red giant. During this period, the Sun will increase in size, reaching a radius that is several hundred times larger than its current size. As it does so, it will start to engulf nearby planets such as Mercury and possibly Venus. This process will be accompanied by a sharp increase in the Sun's luminosity, leading to catastrophic changes on Earth. It is expected that the increase in surface temperature on our planet will be so significant that all the oceans will begin to evaporate, and the atmosphere will be destroyed, leaving Earth defenseless against the cosmic vacuum. As a result, our planet may become a scorching desert, resembling modern-day Venus, where the temperature reaches around 400 degrees Celsius, and the atmosphere is primarily composed of carbon dioxide with acidic clouds. These changes will take place over millions of years, and eventually, Earth will lose all signs of life as we know it. Thus, even such a dramatic transformation is just a part of the natural cosmic cycle in which stars, like our Sun, are born, live, and die. Scientific research shows that similar changes are observed in other stars in our galaxy. For example, the star Betelgeuse, which is in a stage preceding a supernova explosion, already demonstrates changes in its size and brightness, indicating its imminent demise. Therefore, such a cycle is not just a coincidence, but a law of nature inherent in all stars. The Sun will complete its life cycle by shedding its outer layers, which will form a planetary nebula, leaving behind a core that will become a white dwarf. This white dwarf, gradually cooling, will emit a faint glow until it becomes invisible to the human eye. When the Sun reaches this stage, all that will remain is a lifeless core, and Earth will have long since become a barren world where no one will be left to witness this cosmic spectacle. Thus, the process we are currently observing is part of a grand and inexorable cycle, in which stars like our Sun are replaced by new stars igniting from the remnants of the old ones. Changes on Earth have been occurring over millions of years, and each epoch has left its mark on geological formations and ecosystems. From the formation of continents around 2.5 billion years ago to the last glacial periods that ended approximately 10,000 years ago, the planet has experienced numerous catastrophic events. Humanity, which emerged around 200,000 years ago, represents only a tiny moment in this endless dance of time. But this moment has been pivotal. People are not only capable of understanding their past, but also actively influencing the future of Earth, making our species unique among others. We witness the extinction of species. Over the past 500 years, more than 500 bird species have disappeared, and this is just one of the striking examples of the impact of human activity on nature. We have been witnesses to ecological disasters, such as global warming, caused by carbon dioxide emissions that increased by 40% in the 20th century. Simultaneously, we see positive changes. The movement for environmental protection, which began to gain strength in the 60s of the 20th century, and scientific achievements in the restoration of ecosystems. Scientific research by scientists like Jane Goodall and David Attenborough emphasizes the importance of preserving biological diversity, as each species, even the smallest, occupies a unique place in the ecosystem. We are at the center of an era where the awareness of our responsibility for the planet becomes critically important. Models of sustainable development implemented worldwide show that we can change the course of events if we start acting today. We are capable not only of preserving the remaining ecosystems, but also of restoring those that have been destroyed. For example, in New Zealand, a project for the restoration of forests has already led to an increase in the number of local species. It is important to understand that this process requires time and effort, but it is possible. We must remember that Earth is not just a planet where we live. It is a complex and dynamic system that has undergone numerous transformations. Our ability to understand this system and our place in it gives us a unique strength and responsibility. Each of us can contribute to the protection of nature, starting with simple actions such as sorting waste and using renewable energy sources.